Chapter 1. Ōtsutsuki Kaguya was, as far as the elemental nations were concerned, a oni, a demon. It was with good reason. The horns that adorned her forehead did nothing to dissuade that fact, and she made no move to hide them. The extra eye that had settled itself in the middle of her forehead was another factor that had started the rumors, among others. There was also the point that if the horns and extra eye weren't there, she would look quite beautiful, her long white hair enforcing the fact that her previous occupation was a princess. It also enforced rumor that she was a succubus, a particular rumor that she found quite laughable. But it was the immense power that she wielded that drove the final nail into the coffin. While she couldn't bend the elements to her will, she did have that ability to manipulate them via the use of her 3 different eyes. The white eye, as she called it, allowed her to see through walls almost 360 degrees with the exception of the small blind spot at her upper neck. It also allowed her to see some sort of circulatory system that was in dim everyone, besides herself, which glowed brightly. She theorized that it was whatever allowed her to do things that others couldn't, but she wasn't sure. This type of eye occupied the 2 eye sockets on either side of her face and were a pale white, making her seem blind, which she was anything but. The tome eye, for the tomes that rotate around the pupil, allow her to see the world slower than normal, in addition to being able to memorize whatever she saw, as well as being able to see a downgraded version of the circulatory system that the white eye could see. The tome eye, that was completely red with a pupil in the center and 3 tomes that swirled around it, was located in a slit in the middle of her forehead that was shared by what was, in her opinion, her most powerful eye. The Rinnegan had a ripple-like pattern, which spreads over the entire eyeball, with light purple sclera and irises. While it so far gave her the ability to manipulate what she had dubbed the 5 basic elements, those being wind, water, fire, earth, and lightning. She had the ability to change the Rinnegan with the tome eye at will by shutting the slit that both eyes were located in and concentrating on the eye she desired. She could also feel there were other abilities just waiting to be unlocked. She had the potential of a god at her very fingertips, and it made her shiver in anticipation just thinking about unlocking the secrets of the eye. It had an unknown potential that she would spend the rest of her life unraveling if that is what it took. The Usagi no Megami, or rabbit goddess, was currently seated kneeling on a balcony of a monastery that peered over much of the lands that were being bathed in the darkness of the night. The monastery itself is high in the mountain ranges of the lightning daimyo lands, which once housed monks that search for enlightenment, the meaning of life, if kami exists, blah, blah, blah. She didn't actually pay attention to what they were doing here, or what they were screaming at as she slaughtered them, or as burned their library down with them inside when they tried to barricade themselves in. The monastery was built on top of a mountain, with numerous areas that were to her liking. None of that mattered, though. What did matter was that she sensed something that was gaining power. Maybe within several years at the current rate, its power would be above her own. She could only hope it would stop before then, otherwise who knows what would happen. Whatever it is, it has been growing in strength for the past week. She thought, it seems similar to the shinju fruit that I ate, yet different. As far as I am aware, the mortal plane is forbidden to gods, as even half the power of a god fully manifesting on the mortal world would crack it like an egg. Or at least that's what the ancient texts state, although it was written by mortals not gods, so it is mostly based on theory rather than fact. It could be an avatar of a god. That would make more sense, and if it is similar to the presence that shinju fruit, it means that it is most likely an avatar of the shinju. The question is, why is the shinju awakening now? It is obviously about the fruit I devoured, but that was a couple of years ago, so why awaken now? Why not earlier when I couldn't control my new strength? Something must have changed, and if my feelings are correct, it is due to what else happened in the past week. As stood from her kneeling position, she turned around and retreated back into the monastery, choosing to check on the reason she had invaded the monastery in the first place, as well as the reason she was choosing not to confront the power now. The monastery was not incredibly large compared to others she had visited, but it was not small by any means either. The monastery she currently occupied had a courtyard, several bedrooms, 2 praying rooms that she would turn into testing areas for her powers, a large garden that had an energy similar to the one she wielded that she had yet to investigate, but had deemed mostly unimportant, a dojo for sparring, and an armory. It had surprised her that a monastery would have weapons, but they were most likely using the katas or stances as an art form instead of a way to kill. In other words, they thought it looked pretty and thought they should try it. Walking down the halls, her thoughts turned to the rest of the world momentarily. After casting what she called the infinite Tsukuyami, she released the hold she had on the world to see if they were worthy to have free will, and while so far they hadn't disappointed her, she kept herself wary of deception. She had already heard rumors of war, and that alone made her wish she had kept her hold on the world. After traveling through the monastery, she came across the room that housed the reason she was here, in this monastery, in the first place. She moved around, choosing to kneel at the top of 2 of the 3 futons. Kaguya observed the 2 objects, 2 children, her children. That thought still brought a small smile to her face. The 2 babies were the reason she was here. After deciding to have a child, she found a wealth noble man and placed him under an illusion, and had her way with him before killing the man. It's not like she was going to take him with her anyway, and she didn't want the possibility of her child choosing him over her, no matter how small it was. Though it was only until she was several months pregnant that she realized she would need a safe place for her child to grow up and be protected without having to move around. This made her come to the decision to occupy a monastery. They were perfect, isolated, with open areas, and were usually self-sustaining due to how hard it is to approach one. Eventually, she chose the one she currently occupied and gave birth to 2 children, not a single child. 2. It was one of the best days of her life, albeit one of the most painful as well. Now, almost 3 weeks after giving birth, she sat near her 2 children, just calmly observing them. She had yet to name them, and it was quite annoying as she couldn't keep referring to them individually as child. Maybe she could think up one now. That was a good idea. She would observe both children and think up a name that fits. As she looked over both of her children, she decided to start with the one to her right. There wasn't much to say about either child physically, as both of them weren't even a month old and looked almost identical. The child she was currently focused on, however, did have something different about him, the Rinnegan. When she first saw the eye, when she looked closely at the child, she nearly dropped him. She couldn't look at them completely because the child had yet to fully open his eyes, but she could just make out the ringed pupils of her most powerful eye. Other than that, he was as normal as all the other children. However, that was on the outside. Using her white eyes, she observed the child's power that he had gained from her. It was quite large, not as big as Kaguya's own, but that was to be expected. He was a child after all, but it didn't change the fact that it was big and maybe would one day rival her own. The second circulatory system that ran throughout his body was also similar to Kaguya's own again, but still on a smaller scale. His power was in constant motion, always moving. She also felt more of a connection to this child than her other, though that doesn't mean she doesn't love her other child. No. Kaguya meant that she felt she had a connection to this child due to his eyes matching one of her own. But that didn't matter. Kaguya loved both of her children. Turning to the other child, he looked like a completely normal child. Short tufts of white hair were starting to grow, just like his brother. Although his brother's hair was a surprising reddish-orange, he received from his father, with completely white eyes. Not like her white eye, but completely white eyes, no hint of a pupil or iris. If she hadn't seen him reach for her when she held him, Kaguya would have sworn he was blind. Quite ironic for a woman who prides herself on her visual prowess. Though that was just the physical side of things, it was what she couldn't see that guaranteed that he was in fact her son. His power coils, as she'd coined the system that was invisible to the ordinary eye, were massive. Not massive as another word for big, but his coils were already on par with her own. But there was something about his coils that differed from both Kaguya's own and his brother's. Not only were they larger, but it also seemed stronger. Where her own coils, as well as her other sons for that matter, were a nice solid blue color, his were a deep blue, bordering on dark blue. Kaguya had no idea what this meant, but she knew it was some sort of advantage he had over her own power. There was also the fact that he seemed in control of his own coils. She didn't know how, but his power moved around his coils depending on his mood. The one time she had seen him cry, his power had responded and speed up the speed at which it moved around the pathways. It was extraordinary. It was like he was instinctively in control of it. Despite how different they were, Kaguya knew they were still brothers. Both of them rarely ever made a sound, but when they did it was usually in tandem with the other. And now, As Kaguya looked at them, she knew both her sons would be destined for greatness, for glory. But this still didn't help with her original problem of naming the two children before her. As she turned her head back to the eldest twin, the one on her right, a name struck her, one that she knew would change the world on a massive scale, one that would change the way the world and the people in it worked. As she looked down on the child that had the same ripple eyes as her, she whispered his name. Ōtsutsuki Hagoromo, you will change the world and all who live in it. This I know is true. As she turned to the other child, the one who was different and similar at the same time, she smiled. He would also do amazing things, she was sure. But his future she felt mostly uncertain about. But one thing she did feel certain about is that he would have the ability to change things, to be able to ruin even the best of plans and make the most impossible of things happen. She smiled. Ōtsutsuki Naruto, my little maelstrom, you will be the one to keep people on their toes, the one impossible to predict, and will do things even I would find impossible. As she finished her naming of her children, her thoughts turned to that of sleep. She stood up before moving off to the third futon in the room, and as she drifted off into a slumber, she wondered just how her sons would change the world. As she sat knees folded beneath her, Kaguya reflected over the years that passed since she had given birth to her two children. Two babies had turned into toddlers, and from there into the 7-year-olds they currently were. The years passed relatively quickly with small bumps, but she had believed that she had succeeded in raising two smart and intelligent. Get back here, Naruto. You have to take your punishment like a man. A childish voice that she recognized yelled. As the noise reached her ears, she withheld a little sigh. Despite her intention to raise them like children that were worthy of the station of a noble, meaning not childish, both of them had moments when it seemed like she had made no progress at all. Naruto was incredibly resistant to her methods, it seemed. While Hagoromo had welcomed her lessons and tried to act dignified and wise at all times, despite still having the stature of a child, Naruto had shown he was instinctively childish and took every opportunity to remind both herself and his brother that fact. It's not my fault you fell of a branch and into pond. That's all you. Another voice, Naruto, yelled back. You pushed me. The first voice accused loudly. Not my fault you're not aware of your surroundings. Naruto yelled back. Kaguya released the sigh she tried to withhold. This was a common occurrence. Hagoromo would try to complete his daily meditation in a tree above a pond in the garden, and Naruto would come along and try to make a fool of his older brother by pushing him into a pond somehow, usually succeeding in his endeavor. Kaguya honestly didn't know who to be disappointed in more, Naruto for the prank or Hagoromo for not moving after the 5th time. Kaguya simply turned her head to the right as she watched two 7-year-old children burst out from the bush with speed that two children shouldn't have. The first having white hair that was starting to hang down, completely white eyes, wearing a brown monk's robe with red magatama down the front, barefoot, with small bumps on his forehead that would eventually grow into horns much like Kaguya's own. Kaguya's belief that Naruto wasn't blind turned out to be true. Kaguya had actually believes that Naruto has better eyesight than normal in exchange for not having his mother's or brother's eyes. The fact that Naruto would never have awesome eyes like his mother or brother at first made Naruto sad at first, a bit jealous that Hagoromo had the same eyes as his mother before Kaguya pointed out that Naruto had the same hair as her. Naruto then swore he would wear his hair long just like her, which made his mother smile a bit at the promise, believing it to be cute. The second boy that came out from the bushes had short reddish hair with purple eyes that had ripples that spread out from the dot at the center of the eye. He was also wearing the same robe as the boy before him and was also barefoot. Hagoromo had grown up to be a serious child like Kaguya wanted. He played with his brother sometimes, but would usually choose to read the books that he scavenged from what left of the library or meditate usually. This was what originally started Naruto's reign as the self-proclaimed prank king, believing Hagoromo should stop being boring and have fun instead of sitting still and doing nothing. Despite Hagoromo's constant objections to Naruto that meditation was doing something, Naruto continued to prank Hagoromo whenever he found him meditating. When questioned why he continued to constantly prank his brother, Naruto only replied, "I'm bored and Haganaken isn't doing anything important." Naruto seemed to find infinite amusement in calling Hagoromo his nickname. The two children continued the chase with speed that would astound an outsider, but was just normal in the family of three. While Kaguya hasn't started training them in their powers, she had given them a fitness regime to help occupy their time in the monastery, while she tried to train in her own powers in privacy. She didn't want one of her children to see her training and try to replicate it on their own. Of the two boys, Naruto was the fittest, not that it meant that Hagoromo wasn't fit. It was just that Naruto put more effort into the exercises, choosing to go that little bit further than his brother. Hagoromo spent more time trying to become wise like his mother to help fulfill his goal of trying to create everlasting peace for the elemental nations. When told of their mother's dream for peace, both boys instantly made it their goal to try and achieve it along with their mother. Although Hagoromo believed that peace could be achieved without force, hence the constant studying and meditating to become both smarter and wiser. His brother's belief on peace, however, was different. He believed that reaching out to the younger generation was the answer. Naruto believed that if the children of each generation were told the right way to do things, that it was possible to prevent war from ever happening. When Naruto told both his brother and mother of his answer, both of them looked at him strangely. While Naruto didn't show it, he was actually quite intelligent, so it was a shock to both of his family members that the prank king could say something so wise. Kaguya was knocked out of thoughts by a noise. Looking over at the two children, she saw both of them wrestling on the ground. It was obvious Naruto was winning. His superior fitness made itself known as he pinned his older brother to the grass. It wasn't exactly a pin. It was more like Naruto sitting on Hagoromo's back and not getting off until he promised to not chase Naruto if he let him up. The time in between that, however, was mostly 7-year-olds sprouting cures at each other. Kaguya could honestly say she was surprised by the curse words coming out Hagoromo's mouth. Perhaps she should check just what kinds of books he was reading. Kaguya's observations were broken by the presence she had sensed several years ago. It had passed her own power a year ago, and now Kaguya was seriously worried. The power just went up at constant rate, showing no sign of stopping or slowing down. Kaguya was now certain that whatever is was had to be godly in nature, or at least part god. Nothing normal should have the amount of power she was sensing, while no one except Naruto. The reason Kaguya had yet to start training her two sons in their own powers, as well as forbid them from experimenting, was that she wanted to wait until they were maturing enough to use them. Teaching 5-year-olds things that could blow up houses was not a good idea. However, she wanted to start teaching her children at the same time, and while Hagoromo was ready, she was worried about Naruto. His power had already exceeded hers by a fair amount, and she was worried he wouldn't able to control it and that it would get out of control in the end. Though she had already wasted time and put off her children's training, the power of this being was making Kaguya slightly nervous. I can't keep putting this off, she thought. Sooner or later, whatever is gaining power will do something with it, and I can't put my sons in danger by not teaching them anything to defend themselves with. Besides, the level of Naruto's power will continue to rise in age, just like Hagoromo and myself. If Naruto has trouble with his abilities, I'll just have to help him a bit more than his brother. With her mind made up, she took a deep breath and calming herself before standing up and facing Hagoromo, who was still on the ground but now struggling profusely, and Naruto, who was on his back and appeared to be attempting to give his brother what he liked to call a wet willy. Kaguya simply tried to stifle a smile at the funny scene before composing herself. Hopefully training in his powers would help quell Naruto's boredom and get him to quit his pranking. Naruto, Hagoromo, in front of me now, Kaguya commanded in a stern voice. Immediately both Naruto and Hagoromo were standing in front of her, hands by their sides, their face flat. They knew better to joke around with the serious side of their mother. While she usually let them do whatever they want within reason, in return she expected to get listened to when asked. The one time that they didn't was a time they didn't want to remember, but both of them had bruises for weeks. As Kaguya looked over her two children, she spoke again, this time with a softer voice. I have done some thinking over the past few days and decided to start training you both in your power. As she predicted, both of them opened their eyes wide and looked at her in surprise. Before they could comment, she had already continued. This time she returned to her hard voice. In return, I expect you to listen to my every word regarding this matter. Okay. That means that you do not experiment with your powers alone unless I say that it isn't dangerous. You don't use your powers against each other unless in a spar. Also, individual rules for each of you. Hagoromo, you do not attempt to copy anything you see me do, and do not attempt to find out any powers of the Rinnegan. Okay. Hagoromo nodded, showing he understood, and Kaguya turned her attention to her youngest. Naruto, you do not attempt anything you see me or you brother use, because you don't have the Rinnegan and you might hurt yourself somehow. Everything you learn will have to be from scratch. Do you accept this? Naruto looked up at his mother with unwavering eyes and nodded. While Naruto didn't know what he could do, he felt the need to prove he was just as good as his brother could be. While he got over the fact that he would never get the Rinnegan, Naruto always felt left out when his mother and brother discussed the abilities of the eye, because Naruto had no idea what powers he had. Hearing his two family members talk about their potential and what they could or would be able to do always left a stinging sensation in his chest. Now, however, he was determined to change that. The next time his family talked about powers, he would be right there telling him his theories about what he could do. Good, because if either of you break these rules, I'll stop teaching you and make sure you feel eternal pain. You got that? Both siblings gulped at the threat and nodded. They knew their mother well to tell when she was serious about going through with something. After a few seconds of silence, Hagoromo worked up the courage to ask a question. So we're finally going to be learning how to use chakra? Said Hagoromo while his younger brother and mother held back a snigger and smile, respectively. Ever since he was little Hagoromo and he first heard of the power his mother wielded, he had, in a rare bout of childish logic, declared that it was called chakra. Despite his growing maturity, Hagoromo still called the strange power chakra and was determined to his brother and mother behind his idea. Yes, Hagakun, I'm going to teach you about chakra, smiled Kaguya. Hagoromo winced a little at the embarrassing nickname before smiling at the fact that he had got his mother to start calling the power chakra. Naruto sniggered again at the nickname his brother had gotten from their mother before looking at her. So what are you going to teach us first, Kasensei? Asked Naruto with an eager look. Kaguya smiled, and a glint appeared in her eye. Time to begin the tort training. Ōtsutsuki Naruto was wondering what was wrong with him, wondering what he was doing incorrectly. But the only answer that came to him was nothing. For months after his mother had finally agreed to train both his brother and himself, and he was getting nowhere while his brother was working on mastering his force powers. It was frustrating how his brother was having more success than him. Naruto was currently in what was once a room of prayer for the monks that used to live in the monastery. The room had been changed by his mother in the time his family had lived in the monastery, and the room was now just a large square box that was about 5 meters high and 20 meters from one end to the other, with the other prayer room being identical. Naruto sighed. He'd done what his mother had said and just meditated, hoping the abilities that he had would just come to him like it had to his mother, but it wasn't working. It didn't help that he was completely surrounded by brick and rock. Naruto was used to feeling the air around him, feeling it through his hair, on his skin. He especially liked it when it was windy, with the air pushing against his skin, ruffling his hair with his clothes flapping around, standing up on his toes, and the feeling of them not touching the ground. Wait a minute. Naruto opened his eyes and looked down. Naruto would later deny that he was the one that made the girlish scream that drew his mother and brother from the other former praying room to his own. He was hovering off the ground. It was insane, sounding almost impossible, but he was suspended about 2 meters off the ground. As his brain caught up with what he was seeing, he became incredibly excited. Unfortunately, that quickly turned to fear when he started to lean forward. Quickly trying to steady himself so he wouldn't hit the ground, he moved his right leg forward and thrust down unconsciously, adding more chakra to whatever he was doing. This was proven to be the wrong thing to do when he was propelled upwards. Realizing that what he was doing was similar to a front flip, he brought his legs together, keeping them straight. It was in that second when he realized what his mother said about it coming to him instinctively. Now knowing what to do, as he finished the front flip in the air, keeping a steady amount of chakra coming out from the bottom of his feet, he managed to regain his balance as whatever he was pushing out the bottom of his feet met the ground and kept him afloat. Now, though he was about 3.5 meters in the air, he quickly composed himself and tried to continue doing whatever he was doing while also figuring it out. After observing it, he realized that during his thoughts of the wind, he had unconsciously been pushing chakra out the bottom of his feet, and his thoughts of wind had made his chakra change the form that it came out in, resulting in him being lifted off the ground. In simple words, his chakra reacted to his thoughts, turned into wind, and it pushed him off the ground. It was just as he was finishing these thoughts that the door to the room opened and his mother and brother walked. "Are you okay, Naruto?" We heard a scream. His mother said as she walked in before stopping and looking around before frowning. "Naruto, where are you? If this is one of your tricks." "Cousin, I don't think that this is one of Naruto's tricks," Hagoromo said as his wide eyes locked on to his younger brother. His eyes had been able to see the chakra coming from the ceiling. "What makes you say that?" his mother said as she turned her head to look at him. Hagoromo didn't answer at first, but instead pointed towards the ceiling. "That," he simply said. As the self-proclaimed Oni turned her head upwards before her eyes mimicked her eldest son. There hovering in mid-air was Naruto with a smile she knew wasn't going to be coming off his face anytime soon. "Hey, Kachin," he said in a sing-song voice. "Guess what I can do?" Somehow she knew that this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. When Ōtsutsuki Kaguya heard what she thought was the girly scream of her youngest child, she didn't really know what to expect when she walked into the room he was occupying with her oldest in tow. But she was pretty sure that seeing him suspended in midair by nothing was not one of them. At first she thought that he had inherited some sort of illusion ability from her, and that what was currently in front of her was an impressive illusion meant to deceive her, but channel chakra, as Hagoromo insisted that she couldn't keep calling it power. Into her white eye quickly disproved that theory. She could see his chakra traveling around his body, only this time it was at a constant, relatively fast pace. The chakra traveled around his body, but when it got to his feet, some of the chakra was siphoned off, appeared to change somehow, and become pressurized wind that shot out from his feet. Kaguya was shocked. While she could manipulate the 5 elements and some sort of force thanks to the Rinnegan. But that was just it, manipulating. What she could do with the elements was like a giant trying to pick up a grain of sand. While she could use the elements, she would never have the kind of control that her son was displaying before her. "Hey Kasensei, look at me, I can fly like a bird." She was shaken out of her musings by the object of her thoughts starting to move around the large praying room at a quick pace. About the same speed he could run, which was quite fast. Panicking at the thought of her son falling, she quickly made herself known to her youngest, who was too caught up in exploring his newfound power. "Naruto, get down here now," she exclaimed, worry and concern in her tone. Naruto stopped slowly, lowered himself to the ground before smiling like a cat that caught the canary. "So what do you think, Kachin? Pretty cool, right?" He excitedly, and with good reason. He was just flying. Flying. In his book, that is like the king of all cool powers. However, his mood changed from excited to nervous when he heard the tone in his mother's voice. "What I'm thinking is how to punish you without killing you." The sickly sweet tone in his mother's voice was one he had heard before, as well as the words spoken. The words have another meaning besides the obvious one, which was, "You have 5 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't give you the beating of a lifetime." Knowing that his mother's threat was real, he quickly began saving his own hide. "It was an accident," he voiced sheepishly, his right hand coming up to rub the back of his head like he always did when he was nervous. "I was imagining the wind and wanted to be outside. Next thing I know, I'm flying." He hoped his excuse that was enough to avoid punishment, but just to be sure he decided to try to get on his mother's good side. "On the bright side, your method about how it will come to you worked," he said, smiling while silently praying to Kami, Yami, Shinigami, and all the immortal beings in the world to help spare him from his mother's wrath if it didn't work. He didn't want to die young. There were still so many things he hadn't done, so many people he hadn't pranked yet. "Well," his mother said, appearing to be believing Naruto's innocence in the matter. "I suppose you had no control over what happened." Yes, Naruto thought he was home free. He was going to live. On the other hand, you didn't come down straight away, so your punishment will be a beating by yours truly. Naruto blanched. Despite how fast he was, his mother was still faster and stronger than him. In other words, he was screwed. He sent pleading eyes to his brother, but the look in his elder sibling's eye was clear. "Are you crazy? Every man for himself, bro." "Traitor," Naruto thought. And to think, I was going to ask for his help pranking Kachin. As his thoughts turned back to his mother, he faced her. She was advancing on him with a look that spoke of pain. A quick look to see if he could use his brother as a human shield turned out to be a bust, as he had already fled the room and closed the door. "Oh shit." For the next half an hour, the monastery would be plagued by the screams of a child and the insane laughter of his mother. "Hey Naruto, didn't know your voice could go that high. Is there anything else you haven't told me? You're a bastard. You know that, right, Hagoromo? Hey, it was every man for himself. What in Kami's name was I meant to do? Not be a chicken would be helpful. I acted in my own interest just like you would in that situation." Naruto had no comeback for that. It was an unspoken agreement that when their mother was angry at either one of them, it was every man for himself. Now, a day after the beating, he suffered from his beating from his mother, and Naruto was still sore all over. The Ōtsutsuki boys knew that when their mother spared with either one of them that no punches were pulled. The same could be said for her punishments. It was a way for the boys to want to get better to stop the massacre that was sparing with their mother and be goofed to avoid the unrivaled pain they received from mother's beatings. "You could have at least tired to get me out of it. Do you know how much pain I feel right now?" Naruto whined as he lay on his back in the monastery's garden. His monk robes were still ripped and torn from yesterday's beating, and Naruto wasn't in any rush to get a new one in his current state. It was painful enough to walk outside. His brother was seated next to him, meditating while their mother was working on her project. They didn't actually know what it was, just that their mother promised she would give it to them when she believed they were ready, whenever that was. Naruto sighed. Well, since he was trying to stay perfectly still to minimize the pain he was feeling, maybe he should meditate. He hasn't done it recently, and while he doesn't prize meditation as high as his brother does, he still knows its importance. Closing his wide eyes, he calmed himself, slowed his breathing, opened his senses inwards, and felt his own chakra and began moving it around his body. Ever since he was small, he had always had impressive control of his chakra, being able to move it around his body at whatever speed he desired, even reversing the flow if he tried hard enough. But he wasn't going to do that. Right now, he was going to meditate. He felt his chakra flow around his body like a river, never deviating. It gave him a slight sense of euphoria. Breathing out a sigh, he winced as he moved his chest. He was sure that something was fractured in his chest. He wished something would fix so he would be in so much pain. He imagined his bone and the fracturing quickly healing. It was then that he felt it, the same instinct that gave him control over his wind abilities. He knew what to do. Channeling chakra into the wound on his chest, his eyes still closed, the thought of wanting to heal still on his mind. He stifled a gasp. He felt his chest healing, the fracture healing, even the bruises on his other ribs that he didn't know he had. Hearing his brother gasp beside him, he wondered what he was seeing before stopping that train of thought. He still had his stomach, arms, and legs to heal. Spreading more of his chakra to his stomach than arms and legs, he began healing the bruises that riddled the rest of his body. Once he felt his body healed, he let his chakra recede back and let it flow the way it usually did. Opening his eyes, he slowly sat up before careful prodding his ribs before releasing a sigh when he felt no pain. Feeling eyes on him, he slowly turned his head to where he felt the stare coming from and saw it was from his brother, his ripple eyes wide and his mouth slightly open. Naruto looked at him for a bit longer before grinning like a loon. "Close your mouth, Hagakun. Otherwise you'll catch flies." The sound of his brother's voice brought Hagoromo out of his staring. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" Hagoromo said, still not quite there yet. He just say his brother healed from injuries that should have put him down for weeks at least. First flying, now self-healing. What was next? Hagoromo shook the thought from his head. Knowing his brother, it was most likely going to be something that shouldn't be possible. "Well, I know I'm awesome, so I'll forgive your staring this once commoner. After all, who can't stop and stare in the presence of the mighty and totally cool Ōtsutsuki Naruto?" exclaimed Naruto, jumping to his feet and puffing his chest out in what was an attempt at making him look more awesome. Before Hagoromo could put his brother down in a mostly likely humiliating way with words, he was interrupted by his mother appearing at the entrance to the garden. Kaguya had been working on several surprises for her two sons that she would give them when she felt they were for them, when she felt a release of chakra. One that she felt was most likely Naruto doing something stupid, like playing with chakra again. Although because of yesterday, she was mostly likely going to take it easy on Naruto for the punishment this time, as not only was he probably still sore from his last one, but also because he was doing this on instinct with no real control over what he was doing. Unless, of course, he was trying to fly again using his ability over wind. In that case, something would be broken just in case he didn't get the message. Instead of being greeted by Naruto flying when she got to the garden, which was where the chakra had emanated from, she was greeted by Naruto standing up in what was left of his monk's robe with his chest puffed out, and his older brother sitting beside him looking like he was going to say something that was going to start both of them wrestling all over the garden. Wanting to avoid the situation, Kaguya made her presence known. Would one of you two like to tell me who was using chakra and for what reason? The sound of their mother's voice made both boys snap their heads in her direction. Soon after that, Naruto stopped puffing his chest out and Hagoromo stood up on his 2 feet. Naruto then gave a nervous smile to his mother, possibly debating on running. Kaguya idly thought. Naruto then spoke up. I found out another one of my abilities, Kachin, Naruto said, before quickly adding. And believe it or not, it wasn't dangerous in any way. Kaguya arched an eyebrow, asking for that explanation to be expanded upon. My new ability lets me make my chakra heal myself, Naruto explained before scrunching his brow together in thought. It may also allow me to heal others if I can bring that sort of chakra outside of my body, he added, like an afterthought. Hagoromo then spoke, adding his opinion. I agree with my brother on both accounts, Kazan. He did heal himself, and it may be possible for him to heal others if he can bring that kind of chakra out of his body, said Hagoromo. He then paused for a minute before adding more on to comment. But it is also my belief that he will have to study extensively about what he wants to heal before he can actually do that. Kaguya raised an eyebrow. And what makes you believe that, Hagakon? She asked. Naruto managed to hold back a snigger. The last time he laughed out loud, his mother started to constantly call him Narukin for the entire day. His mother doesn't usually call him that unless she wants to embarrass him or is incredibly proud of him. Either way, he usually came out of the situation embarrassed, so he learned to laugh on the inside. Hagoromo's cheeks tinged red slightly before he composed himself, as much as a 7-year-old kid could anyway. When he performed the healing ability, he healed himself. It was just that, he was himself. He already knew exactly where and what he needed to heal. But if he was healing someone else and they were unconscious, he would have to know what was broken, especially if he was healing one of us, as our own chakra might reject his, believing it be doing more harm than good. Kaguya thought about what her son had said and realized he was completely. Hang on, wait a minute, I didn't do anything. Naruto interrupted her train of thought with his words. All I did was imagine myself to be healed. What do you mean? Naruto's brother asked curiously. It's not like you could have just imagined yourself healing, and you did. At the end, Hagoromo scoffed. That's impossible, it must have been your chakra. That's not what I mean, idiot. Naruto said indignantly while turning to face his brother. Honestly, he was dumb. What I meant was that the same thing happened yesterday. It was instinct. I imagined myself healing, and then I suddenly knew how to do it. Then when I moved my chakra over the areas where I was injured, my chakra healed me. I didn't think about my bones mending or anything at all. It was like my chakra knew what was injured and fixed it. The mother of two watched her children bicker while she thought over the situation. Naruto's chakra had healed him, that much was obvious. But what was left uncertain was if the chakra acted on its own or if it used her son already had. There was only one to find out. Both of you stop. Instantly, both of the children stopped arguing and stood in front of Mother, hands by their sides. Here is what is going to happen. Naruto, you're going to work on bringing that chakra out of your body. Once you do, I'm going to find an animal and injure it. You will then have to send out your chakra to fix whatever I did. This will determine if you can heal injuries that you don't know about, okay? Naruto nodded. Good, she said before turning to her eldest and speaking. Hagoromo, you can choose to either stay with your brother or do something else. It is up to you. Hagoromo also nodded. Good, Naruto, you may begin. While she went away to find an animal, Naruto turned around and sat back down, determined to recreate the feeling from before. His brother followed him, choosing to observe his younger sibling, watching the chakra around his hands spike. What his brother was doing definitely demanded observation. Naruto could have the ability to heal almost anything. He also wanted to see if maybe he could recreate this. Hagoromo had always been about peace, and this was the perfect technique to help him. But even if he couldn't heal people, he was happy for his brother. He knew his brother felt a little self-conscious of abilities, feeling that he might not measure up to his mother's standards. After all, their mother told the both of them that she found out about an ability that could summon animals for battle. Another ability lets her create some kind of strange amour and change her arms into weapons of some sort. They had theorized that they were some kind of advanced weapons. They hadn't even found out all there was about the Rinnegan, and even now it was a lot to live up to, so he could understand Naruto's excitement over a new ability. I got it. A voice cut Hagoromo off from his musings. As his eyes focused on his brother, he noticed that Naruto's hands were a bright green and glowing. Thanks to his eyes, Hagoromo saw that the usual dark blue coat of chakra that completely surrounded Naruto's body was now broken by the green chakra that enveloped his hands. Hagoromo was so into looking at the bright color that surrounded Naruto's hand, he missed his brother calling his attention. Hagoromo. Naruto called. No response. Hagoromo snapped out of it. Naruto went to place his hands on Hagoromo's shoulders. Unfortunately for Naruto, he still had the healing chakra coming out of his hands, and Hagoromo chose this moment to come back to reality. As his eyes focused, his Rinnegan eyes made out the chakra that was coming incredibly close. Hagoromo's brain only registered incoming, chakra, and hit. Snapping his arms up, taking Naruto by surprise and grabbing him at the wrist. Hagoromo heard a voice in his mind whisper Gekido. This was the same voice that had helped him control the force that the Rinnegan wielded along with the 5 elements. Except that time it had whispered a different word, Tendo. When his hands touched Naruto's wrists, the chakra around Naruto's disappeared and Hagoromo felt an influx of something he couldn't describe. He felt like he had taken something in, like he had absorbed something. It felt similar to his chakra, but different. Searching inside, he felt his chakra spinning in the other direction. What was going on? Hagoromo was jarred out of his thoughts by a headbutt. Landing on the ground, he rubbed his head to help get rid of the pain before looking up at his younger sibling. What in Kami's name possessed him to do that? What the hell was that for you, idiot? The eldest Ōtsutsuki child demanded. That freaking hurt, Naruto, he said, continuing to rub his head, but made sure he could see his brother to glare at him. Well, sorry if I don't want my chakra to be absorbed, Naruto said sarcastically. That stopped Hagoromo for a second. He was absorbing chakra? He needed a minute to take that all in. Unfortunately for Hagoromo, he wouldn't get it. What are you doing now? Asked an annoyed voice. I left you alone for 5 minutes, and already you two have done something stupid. Kaguya sighed. She left for 5 minutes to get a bird and injure it, which was currently resting in her hands, and already heard the children had gone and done something potential dangerous, if what her hunch was correct. It wasn't my fault this time, I swear, Naruto exclaimed, pushing his hands out in front of him before gesturing to his brother, who was now standing, with a pointed finger. It was him, all him, not me. That guy there. I think Kazan gets it, Naruto, Hagoromo said in a dry voice. All it would have taken was saying it once. Hey, you can never be too certain, Naruto defended, folding his arms across his chest. Kaguya by this time had just raised an eyebrow in amusement. It was always funny to see her children interacted. Despite how amusing it was to see the two bicker, she needed to find out what happened. Would one of you care to tell me what happened? She asked. The two children stopped their arguing and stood straight with their arms by their sides. Hagoromo then launched into the tale about what happened during the 5 minutes. His mother was away. By the end of the tale, Kaguya had come to a conclusion about what to do. Turning to face Hagoromo only, and spoke in what the two brothers called her sensei voice. It was a voice she used when she was serious but not angry at them. Okay, Hagoromo, we will investigate if this Gekido or Preta path. Later right now, we will focus on Naruto. She then turned to Naruto before showing him the bird she had in her hands. Okay, Naruto, this animal had some sort of injury. You are now going to heal it, okay? Naruto nodded before stepping forward and taking the bird from his mother's outstretched hand and place it on the ground. The bird didn't try to fly away or run, indicating it either trusted him or was too injured to move. Putting that out of his mind, Naruto focused on the healing the injured bird, bringing forth his healing chakra, as he decided to call it, and placing his hands over the bird, almost touching it, felt it starting to work. As his chakra started to surround the bird, he began to get a mental image of the bird. No, not just a picture. It was like his chakra was scanning the bird both inside and out, searching for what was wrong. There, He thought before frowning inwardly. Damn, Kachin really didn't take it easy on this bird. It has a severed spine. No wonder it didn't move when I put it down. Wow, Kachin, harsh. Naruto stopped thinking about the injury and moving on to healing the bird. Moving his chakra that was already surrounding the bird, he made it surround the injury. He then watched as the wound slowly healed. It wasn't as fast as when he healed himself, but he put that down to the severity of the injury. This bird had a broken neck. Ordinarily, it wouldn't be able to recover at all. There was something else, though. He could feel the healing that was taking place. Every piece of bone that reconnected to blood vessels that regrew and new nerves that were created. After several minutes of healing, the wound closed and the bird snapped back up to its feet before spreading its wings and flying out and away from the garden, most likely now knowing to stay away from white-haired women. Naruto then stood up, turning to his mother, awaiting her comments. The praise he got made his heart sing. Well done, Naruto, well done. Kaguya praised. I honestly didn't believe you could do it and that your brother's theory was correct, but you proved me and him wrong, and for the better. She smiled at the look of happiness on her son's face. She knew that Naruto feared disappointing her. It was one of the reasons he exercises so fiercely. Kaguya would always love her son. Nothing would change that. Just because he didn't have the Rinnegan didn't mean that she didn't believe that he would grow up to be strong. In fact, she believed that it would make him stronger because of it. There was a part of her that was worried for her eldest child, though, because he had the Rinnegan and how she was showed it with praise about how it made the wielder almost God, something she now regretted doing. She was worried that it might make her eldest son an arrogant brat like a noble's child. That was something she didn't want happening. You have a powerful skill there, Naruto. Healing a severed spine is something that even I can't do, she admitted. Naruto's smile only got wider at that. His confidence in his own abilities had increased thanks to his mother's praise. It felt good that he had something only he could do. It made him feel like he could do something that mattered. How do we know he healed the internal wound, though, like cut veins and all that? Hagoromo pointed out. Both his mother and himself hadn't seen just exactly how much of the bird Naruto had healed. The only reason they could tell that the spine had been healed properly was because the bird had flown off. Naruto turned and smiled at his brother, still high on the praise from his mother. Don't worry, Hagoromo. The bird is fully healed. Naruto paused before explaining. As I healed the bird, I could feel all of it healing, the severed spine, the veins, the nerves along the spine, all of it. It all healed. Kaguya allowed Naruto to bask in his happiness before breaking him out of it. Okay, I think that's enough experimenting for today. Tomorrow, Hagoromo, you will be practicing the elements while Naruto, you will be out here working on your power over wind. When both her sons nodded, Kaguya continued. In that case, because of the discoveries that were made today, I'll allow both of you to have today free of training. She knew that the last part wasn't. Both of them wanted to know more about their powers and would most likely spend the entire day, if they could, training and expanding on their abilities. She watches both of them move to different part of the garden before moving back to her room. She still had surprises to finish after all. 6 months later, and Naruto was bored. Sitting in front of the pond that was in the garden, Naruto reflected on what had happened over the past 6 months. After the incident where Naruto unlocked his healing ability and Hagoromo his Preta path, no new discoveries had been found in either his own abilities or the Rinnegan Eye. This meant that Naruto had nothing new to work. Because he was only 7 years old, there was only so much he could do as his body was still growing. Because he was still a child, he could use anything for weights as his mother didn't want him to stunt his growth. Despite the protest that he could heal himself, his mother had taken a stand and refused to budge from her position, and Naruto knew not to push the issue too far. She said he could use weights when he was 12. Naruto had found a way around this by accident, an incredibly happy accident. Naruto was trying to mimic 2 of his mother and brother's Deva Path techniques called Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push, and Bansho Tenin, Universal Pull, with wind. When trying to mimic Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push, he miscalculated how much power he put into the technique, and it ended up launching him back. In his panicked state, he channeled chakra into his feet, causing him to stick to the ground. When he regained his bearings and realized what he did, he found out that if he channeled chakra into his feet, he stuck to the ground. Then after a brainwave and trial and error, he managed to get himself to stick to walls and ceilings, and even walk or run up them. After another thought, Naruto now sticks himself to the ceiling and does sit-ups for exercise, though he has to remember to channel chakra into his feet so he doesn't fall off. It was incredible funny when he walked into the room where his mother and brother were practicing and casually walked up the wall and hung there like an everyday occurrence. Their faces were hilarious. Despite no new powers, Naruto did find out a few things about his own powers. As it turns out, Naruto doesn't need to consciously think about healing anymore. After initially unlocking his healing ability and using it, he hasn't had to use it to heal himself since except for serious injuries like broken bones. And even then he only has to concentrate for a second to heal the broken bone. Another discovery was that his wind abilities were different to his mother's and brother's, where they channeled chakra into the element they were using and manipulated it like that. Naruto's chakra literally turned into the element he was using in this case, air. It was discovered after his mother and brother couldn't see the chakra in his wind attacks like they could in theirs. Just to be sure, his mother used her tome eye and white eye to check. No chakra in use at all. This meant that they couldn't use absorb his attacks with their Predapath. Hagoromo forgot this once during a spar and thought he could absorb his attack. Needless to say, he made sure not to forget it after that. Another thing that his family had discovered about his powers was that he had superior control of air than either of them had. Naruto could control any part of the air around him at will, without moving if he desires, though that took a lot out of him, while his mother and brother could only launch chakra-based attacks from the general area around their body. Naruto could do so many things with air that neither his brother or mother could do. Fly, turn the wind into shape-based attacks, levitate objects using the wind around it to grab them and lift them. Though he was still working on that, fly, create ferocious winds, fly, and make the wind softly blow the opposite way, making his monk's robes blow, in his words, heroically against the wind. Both his mother and older sibling laughed when he showed them that. Now, though he was bored, he felt like he had exhausted all he could do with his element in such a small space. His mother had forbid him from trying to create a tornado, so here he was, bored. He didn't want to exercise anymore today, and both his mother and brother were training. When he asked his mother what he could do, she only said to try and discover his other abilities. Stupid powers. Naruto grumbled. Why can't more of them unlock themselves or something? Sitting here is so boring. Why can't I use? Hey, he perked up. If I can use one element, there's no reason why I can't use other elements like Kacchin or Hagoromo. After all they can, so why can't I? With a new resolve, he sat down in a meditation position, legs crossed and arms on his knees with his back straight. Okay, if unlocking any more elements is anything like wind, I'll have to imagine the feel of the element and the characteristics of it, as well as what I wanted to do. Deciding to start with water, seeing as there was a lake right in front of him, he closed his eyes and calmed his heart rate. He imagined water, how he splashed Hagoromo in it when they played in the pond, how it felt on his skin. He imagined water rising up out of the lake in the shape of tendrils. He imagined more tendrils of water joining the first and started to swirl around in a circle in the lake, getting faster and faster. Naruto was cut out of his thoughts by water splashing him in the face. Opening his eyes, he was greeted by the sight of tendrils of water in the air in a circle before they splashed back down into the pond due to his lack of concentration. Naruto simply stared at the pond for a moment before pumping his right arm into the air in celebration. Hell freaking India, he exclaimed. I am going to be such a badass in the future. Naruto said to himself with a smile, so wide one might think his face might break. Chapter 3. High in the mountainous region of Lightning Country, a monastery rested carefully on the rocky peak. Within a garden in that same monastery, two boys faced opposite each other. Both of them stood across from each other in a large dirt circle, arms forward in a fighting stance, eyes locked, senses alert. Both 12-year-old children knew not to underestimate the other, and that a split second of lost concentration could mean losing to the person opposite. Both boys were bare-chested, showing off years of rigorous training in the form of a muscular upper body. The only article of clothing they had on were baggy woolen pants that allowed for quick movements with minimal resistance. The only thing that distinguished them was their eyes and hair, one having short red hair with purple ripple-like eyes, the other having long white hair down to the middle of his back and pure white eyes. Both boys also had two horns that adorned their foreheads, both sets being a few centimeters tall. The garden they occupied was silent, like the inhabitants were holding their breath, waiting to see how the fight would begin. It was the one with white hair that started the fight. Rushing forward, he traveled the distance between them in the time it would take for an ordinary person to blink, leaving his opponent no room to move. He appeared in front of his opponent, launching a right kick to the red-haired boy's side with speed that most would find impossible to keep up with. His opponent, though, was not most people. Blocking the kick with his left foot, the red-haired boy thrust his right arm forward, trying to hit his opponent with a palm thrust to the chest. The keyword being trying. The white-haired one seemed to be able to read his opponent's move. Already moving his left had to grab the boy's wrist. Succeeding, the white-eyed child yanked the other child's arm forward before letting go of his wrist, while simultaneously punching the redhead in the chest, launching him back several meters before he came to a stop. "It was stupid of you to try and fight me up close, Hagoromo. You know I'm better than you in that regard," the white-haired one taunted. The other child, Hagoromo, just rubbed the part of his chest where he'd been punched. "I know that, Naruto. What do you think I was trying to do with that palm thrust?" Hagoromo said. Damn, he wished his brother didn't punch so hard. Although, he thought, it could have been much worse were this not a spar. His brother had recently found out how to channel chakra into his fist and release it in such a way that when he punched, he could knock down several trees. They had the proof in another part of the large garden that made up part of the monastery. "Hopefully I won't have to use." He was shaken out of his thoughts by his instincts screaming at him to move. Deciding to trust them, he leaped to the side. It was only his years of training and naturally quick reflexes that helped him narrowly avoid a bolt of lightning that struck the ground, with enough heat and power to scorch the earth and throw up a small amount of dirt. Turning to his brother, Hagoromo yelled out at him for his stupidity. "What the hell was that, you dumbass? You could have killed me. You have to remember that your lightning is far more deadly than mine, and also travels a whole lot faster." Naruto, from across their makeshift arena, rolled his now yellow eyes that were slowly fading back to white. "Why, thank you for that, Hagoromo. I obviously didn't know that after using lightning for several years," Naruto said sarcastically. "You do know that there wasn't enough chakra put in that attack to kill you, right?" Naruto said, smiling. His brother still got angry at the smallest of things. "I scorched the ground," Hagoromo yelled. "Yes, I can see that," Naruto said, smirking. "Still doesn't change the fact that it wouldn't have killed you. Now are you going to continue whining like a baby, or are you going to fight?" Naruto said, goading his brother while falling back into his original fighting stance. Hagoromo said nothing, simply getting back into his own fighting stance. There was a moment of silence before it was broken, this time by Hagoromo. The boy leaned his head back before quickly leaning forward and exhaling a great breath of orange and red flame twice as tall as the one it was aimed at. Instead of panicking, Naruto stayed calm. Using his ability over water, Naruto moved both his hands back before thrusting them forward towards the pillar of fire that approached him. Almost immediately, two things happened. One was that Naruto's white eyes started to glow blue. The second was that a large bubble of water appeared behind him, the result of water vapor in the air joining together via Naruto's will, before it moved forward in front of Naruto and spreading to form a wall of water that blocked the flames with a hiss. Trying to keep the momentum and not wanting to give his brother an inch, using the rest of the water he had, Naruto pulled his hands back before thrusting them again. This time fingers first. The result was the remaining water from the water wall splitting into multiple small bubbles before elongating into spears that then shot forward towards his brother's position. His brother, who hadn't moved from his position, simply knelt down and punched the ground, causing a wall of earth to erupt from the ground, blocking the water spears. Like his brother, Hagoromo then thrusted both hands towards the earthen wall, causing it to move forward. On the other side of the earth wall, Naruto smirked. Instead of dodging around the wall, or even destroying the wall like his brother would expect him to do, he decided to try out a new move that he had theorized would be able to take out his brother, especially if he didn't expect it. Running towards the approaching wall, Naruto leapt up to the top of it before pushing off the wall and launching himself into the air. As he reached the peak of his jump and slowly started to descend, Naruto gathered pressurized wind into a ball beneath his bare feet while strengthening his legs and feet with chakra internally. Naruto grinned as he approached the ground. It didn't really matter anymore if his attack hit his brother or not anymore. He just wanted to try out his new move. As he neared the ground, Naruto called out the name of his attack. Kaze Perusu, Wind Pulse. As Naruto hit the ground, feet first, the sphere of wind beneath his feet was but under amazing pressure because of the combined factors of Naruto's weight, the speed he was falling at, and the solid earth underneath the sphere. Not being able to go up because of Naruto's weight and speed, and not being able to go down because of the earth, the sphere of wind did the only thing it could do. It exploded to the sides. A ring of air shot out from underneath Naruto at breathtaking speeds, kicking up dust as it rocketed outwards before slowly losing momentum. Naruto stood where he landed, waiting for his brother to appear and attack or for the dust cloud to settle. As his visibility cleared, the youngest Ōtsutsuki spied a dome of earth roughly where his brother was standing last time he checked. Assuming that his brother was still in there, he readied himself, just in time to watch as the dome retracted back into the earth, revealing his brother. Almost immediately his brother spoke to him, agitation clear in his voice. "Are you going to do something stupid in every match?" Hagoromo questioned. A noticeable vein was bulging on his forehead as a sign of his frustration with his brother. "I don't know," Naruto questioned back in a lazy voice, clearly trying to annoy his red-haired opponent. "Are you going to do something interrupt a match for things that could wait till later?" "Yes," his brother replied. "I am." Hagoromo continued to look at his brother before smirking, slightly confusing Naruto. "I was saving this for a later time, but I guess now will do." As Hagoromo got into a fighting stance, he mumbled something inaudible to Naruto before he charged. Naruto was surprised at the speed that his opponent was now displaying. He was much faster than before. After getting over his brother's speed, Naruto quickly moved out of the way of the incoming charge before sweeping low with his foot, trying to use his brother's speed against him. Once more, Naruto was surprised when his brother stopped quickly before jumping over the outstretched leg. Naruto quickly straightened back up and engaged his brother with several punches, trying to keep him on the back foot so he could quickly figure out what had changed with his brother's combat skills recently, and, if possible, find a way around it. "What's going on?" Naruto questioned inwardly. Hagoromo was never this fast or agile before. What did he do? Naruto then inwardly winced as he caught one of his brother's punches that almost managed to get inside his guard. And strong as well, he mentally added. Naruto was quick to backpedal to get out of his brother's arm reach. "The only thing I know of that Hagoromo could be using is..." Just as he realized what his brother was using, the voice of his brother jolted him out of his thoughts. "I see you realize what I'm using, Naruto," Hagoromo said as if reading his opponent's thoughts. "And you are correct, the Azura Path." As Hagoromo finished speaking, wordlessly 4 extra arms sprouted out of his shoulder blades. "Out of all the paths he knows, it happens to be the one I hate the most," Naruto said to himself, though his brother still heard him and could only smirk at the reason why. When Hagoromo was first learning how to use the Azura Path in one of the prayer room, it was just himself and Naruto in the room as he wanted to learn more about his mother's and brother's special eyes. While Naruto was in the room, Hagoromo lost control of the path slightly. The result was his fist shooting off his arm and slamming into an unprepared Naruto's stomach. Hagoromo's youngest brother rolled around in pain of the floor. Hagoromo himself laughed until his voice was hoarse. Since then, Naruto has steered clear of his brother whenever he used that particular path. "Don't tell me you're still upset about the Azura incident?" Hagoromo asked, while stifling a laugh. After what had been dubbed the Azura incident, the youngest of the Ōtsutsuki had told both his mother and brother that if they used that particular path in front of him with the exception of a spar, he would leave the vicinity immediately. "And you wouldn't after being hit in the gut by a flying fist. Anyway, how do I know you have control over that path and that you won't just start firing fists at me?" Naruto said as he eyed the 6 fists wearily, as if he expected them to explode. "I wouldn't be using the path if I could control it perfectly. Have some faith in Naruto," the eldest Ōtsutsuki sibling replied to his brother. "I did," his brother mumbled, "and a fist hit me in the gut." If Hagoromo heard his brother, he made no move to show it. "Fine. I guess when I beat your ass it will feel all the sweeter." The youngest sibling then smirked. "Let me show you something else I have been working on recently." As he spoke, Naruto's normally white eyes turned a fiery red, and Hagoromo frowned slightly as he recalled why that was. After a couple of years using his elements, Hagoromo and his mother noticed that when Naruto used a certain element, Naruto's eyes would turn a light shade of the respective element. However, the light always got slightly darker and closer to the color of the element Naruto was using. Their mother theorized that the closer the color was the element Naruto was using, the higher the mastery Naruto had over that particular element. But that wasn't the reason Hagoromo was frowning. The reason he was frowning was because during a fight a few months earlier, Naruto was using the elements heavily while fighting against Hagoromo when Naruto suddenly stopped and his eyes flashed different colors. Sometimes both eyes were the same color, other times different colors in each eye. This continued for about a minute before Naruto collapsed backwards onto the ground, unconscious. When he awoke a day later, Naruto waved off concerns from both his brother and mother, saying that it was just another part of his abilities he unlocked unknowingly by using his multiple elements at the same time. When asked what it was he uncovered, Naruto said that he wasn't quite sure and he would tell them when he was ready and had a firm grasp on what it was and how it worked. It was after Naruto displayed his healing ability that any new abilities that he uncovered, he would be able to practice by himself, as it was unlikely that his mother or brother would be able to help him with any abilities. And so Naruto explored his abilities by himself. That was months ago, and Naruto still hadn't shown any indication what it was his new power could do. Hagoromo got ready for the fire that he knew he would receive from Naruto, tipped off by his glowing eyes. Hagoromo calculated that it would most likely come from the hands or feet, maybe even creating it in the air around him. Instead, though, Naruto chose to take a deep breath and release it in a blowing motion. The result was a large plume of fire to extend out of his mouth. What happened next shocked Hagoromo. The fire twisted and turned, molding itself into something, though Hagoromo didn't know what. The answer was soon clear as fire in the shape of a dragon rushed the six-armed child, with the child barely able to jump to the side to avoid the impact of the elemental dragon. He was caught off guard, though, when the attack exploded, just catching him on the edge of the blast radius. While Hagoromo came out of the blast relatively unscathed thanks to his Azura path, he was still singed by the fire. He was left no room to comment, though, as rock roughly the size of his torso was flung at him by his brother. However, utilizing the abilities of the Azura path, he simply punched the boulder, shattering it with his strength. Not wanting to let his brother have more time to launch another attack, Hagoromo quickly stuck his wrist out. Wordless, several small pointed projectiles launched themselves out from his wrist via fire that came out from the bottom. He then charged behind the metal projectiles, using them as cover to get in close to his brother while his focus was on the metal objects, knowing that he would have the upper hand in close quarters while using the Azura path. Naruto was surprised by the small projectiles, not having any knowledge of them due to not wanting to be present when the Azura path was used. However, it didn't take a genius to know that the incoming projectiles weren't friendly. Quickly gathering his chakra, while knowing that the elements would work against such a large number of projectiles, and extending his hands in front of him. A dark blue dome surrounded Naruto just as the first of the projectiles approached. After the first of the metal objects impacted and exploded against his shield, creating smoke that obscured the front of Naruto's view. Naruto inwardly thanked his luck. He seriously doubted that any earth shield or any shield of the elements he could make would be able to hold up against the current onslaught. It was then that he felt a heavy object smash into his shield with a dull thud. Naruto smirked. Poor Hago, the white-haired boy said to himself. His brother mustn't have seen his shield through the smoke created by his own projectiles. If he had, he would have used a much stronger attack to try to breach his shield, rather than charging. The shield was actually made out of Naruto's own chakra. This was another ability he discovered over the years. Naruto didn't actually the full extent of this ability, like how large he could create structures, because there wasn't enough space in or around the monastery, or how much damage or pressure his chakra creations could take, as it could withstand all of the attacks that weren't on a large scale with the exceptions of the Deva Path's unnamed force abilities. The attacks of the Deva Path moved the chakra constructs unless they were anchored to the ground, just like anything else. There was a passive ability about his chakra constructs ability, as it had been named, that made both Hagoromo and his mother quite frustrated. Though this wasn't so much an ability granted by chakra constructs, but more like a side effect his chakra had on that constructs he made. As it turns out, his chakra was incredibly dense, or in other words, compact. Normally, this wouldn't mean anything besides meaning that Naruto had more chakra than previously thought, but the surfacing of his chakra construct's ability changed that. Because his chakra was incredibly dense, this made the constructs he created harder, but also meant that they were charged with more chakra than originally thought. This had the side effect of rendering the Preta path almost useless against him unless they were fully touching him. This was because it made it slower to absorb the chakra from the chakra constructs he created, meaning that his mother and brother would have to grab onto the constructs or be touching them for long periods, leaving them open to attack from either himself or other constructs. It was an amusing sight to see his brother poring over books or meditating for hours, trying to find a way around the chakra construct's ability. Naruto was about to gloat to his brother when he heard two words that made his eyes widen. Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push. Ah crap, Naruto thought as he was flown towards the edge of the makeshift arena and landed on his back with a thud. Naruto groaned as he made his way towards his feet. Taking one of those Deva Path attacks always hurt, even when the technique's power was lowered significantly. Looking towards his brother at the opposite end of the field, now having the normal 2 arms instead of 6, he couldn't help but inwardly face palm at his own stupidity. Why the hell didn't I press the advantage? Oh, right, to busy with the mini flashback. Note to self: have flashbacks when not sparing within close range of Hagoromo. As he got back into his fighting stance, ready to continue slogging it out with his brother, he was stopped by a voice. Hagoromo, Naruto, stop your spar and come over here, I must talk to you. Turning towards the voice, he noticed his mother standing near the entrance. He lowered his stance, noticing Hagoromo doing the same, and made his way over to his mother. Naruto's mother, Kaguya, had not changed much over the years. The only thing that was really different about her were the 4 long objects wrapped in brown cloth she was holding, 2 in each hand. As they approached her, she sat down with her knees underneath her, placing the bundles on both sides of her, and gestured for them to do the same, which they did. As they sat opposite their mother, they noticed a serious look on her face. After a minute of silence, the Oni spoke. After raising you both for close to 13 years within this monastery, feeding you, clothing you, teaching you, and training you, I have come to the conclusion that in order for you both to grow both ability-wise and as people, it is time for us to leave the monastery. Kaguya waited a moment for the questions that were sure to come, and she was not disappointed. What? Why do we have to leave? This was asked by Naruto, who was followed closely by his elder brother. I agree with Naruto. What reason would we have to leave the monastery? Hagoromo said. He knew several reasons, but wanted to hear them from his mother. Kaguya was silent for a moment before speaking. This monastery, while sheltering you and helping you grow, has left you lacking in knowledge that more common people take for granted. Things like how to interact with other people your own age and an understanding of how the rest of the world behaves and works. I have unfortunately stripped from you when I decided to raise you both in isolation from the rest of the world. It will also hopefully help you see why I believe that peace can only be achieved through forceful means. Here she looked at Hagoromo while he looked back defiantly. During this, Naruto's side. How to achieve peace has been a constant argument between mother and son, both believing that their method was the true way to achieve peace. The only reason Naruto was left out of their argument was that because Kaguya's and Hagoromo's methods completely opposed each other, and because Naruto's own method of peace was almost completely different from both of theirs. After another minute of staring at each other, Kaguya and Hagoromo broke off the staring match, and Kaguya continued speaking. There is also the fact that there isn't enough space to use truly devastating techniques without destroying the monastery, and both of you need to be able to use your abilities on a large scale. Here she turned to Hagoromo again, but this time spoke to him instead of staring. There is also the fact that some of your abilities require people in order to properly test, and I'd prefer it if you didn't use you brother as a test dummy. There are also techniques for other paths that I haven't told you about, because they need large amounts of space. Before we leave, however, both of you need to be able to use a weapon that won't draw attention to yourselves. Here she unveiled the 4 bundles, placing 2 in front either brother. Both of them received a sword, a katana to be precise. Both of them were almost exactly the same, the differences being the guard and the color of cloth the hilt was wrapped in. Hagoromo had his guard in the shape of an orange magatama with purple cloth around the hilt, while Naruto had a golden guard that was etched with the kanji for fire, wind, water, earth, and lightning in a circle. The cloth on Naruto's hilt was a dark blue, the same shade as his chakra. The other gift Hagoromo and Naruto received was a shakujo and a staff, respectively. The shakujo was a strange black metal pole with a gold large ring stuck on top, and 6 smaller gold rings hung from the larger ring. Naruto's staff was strange, made of the same black metal that made up Hagoromo's shakujo. It has a gold topping that split, going opposite ways before the sides pointed down, making the top look like an M shape. Both boys were speechless. The weapons were amazing. "Where did you get these?" Hagoromo asked after a minute to fully take in the weapons in front of him. "The 2 swords were in the armory when I originally arrived here. The other 2 weapons were made by me." Kaguya replied to both boys' shocked features. Their mother had made these. "How?" Naruto asked. "I used an aspect of the Rinnegan to create them both," she said simply. This shocked Hagoromo slightly more than Naruto. Hagoromo had thought he'd seen the majority of the abilities his mother wielded with the Rinnegan, although he knew that there were some abilities he hadn't seen, hence why he wasn't surprised when his mother told him he needed more space for some abilities. But to hear that there was something that could create things was a shock. Why had his mother not shown him this? And more importantly, when did she figure this out? "Kazan, when did you learn how to do this, and why didn't you show me?" The technique was most like not destructive since neither myself nor Naruto have heard anything. "So why the secrecy?" Hagoromo questioned. Though he knew there was most likely a reason, he was quite upset about not even knowing about the ability. "Because Hagoromo," Kaguya said simply, like she chiding him. "The technique I used to create the weapons you see before you is the pinnacle ability of the Rinnegan. This is something that took me years to get right, and just creating those weapons cost me majority of my chakra. This is not a technique to take lightly." She then closed her eyes and released a breath. She opened her eyes as she began to speak, her white eyes staring into the 2 children before her. "I learned this technique several years ago." Here she turned to her eldest. "Hagoromo, what do you know of how I got my eyes and chakra?" Kaguya questioned. Hagoromo frowned, not seeing the point in such a question, but answered it anyway, hoping it would give him the answers he desired. "You told Yuz that you ate the chakra fruit that grew every 1,000 years from the base of the Shinju tree, that you blacked out, then awoke with appearance changed." Hagoromo refrained from questioning what the point of that was. "You are correct, Hagoromo, and that is what make my Rinnegan different from yours." Hagoromo brows furrowed in questioning while Kaguya, who saw the beginnings of a question on his lips, held up a hand to hold him from speaking so she could talk. Throughout this, Naruto sat there silently, knowing he had nothing to really speak about in this matter. It was between his mother and brother. "The difference between your Rinnegan and mine, Hagoromo, is that to unlock your Rinnegan's abilities is a combination of instincts, as seen when you unlocked the Preta path, along with experimentation and practice. My abilities, however, surface the same way as yours with the addition of another way, meditation. What I have realized over the course of my life with the Rinnegan is that all my abilities were already unlocked. However, the shock of my new abilities, as well as my other eyes fought for dominance, had the side effect of forcing my instinctually knowledge of my eye to the back of my mind, and that it is only recently through meditation have they resurfaced." Here Kaguya paused before speaking in a more hesitant voice, something that her Horn sons rarely ever heard. She was usually so sure of herself. "It is also my belief that the instinctual knowledge that is received with the unlocking of the Rinnegan's abilities will fade over the generations, and that it will eventually disappear completely. This is because it has already started with you, Hagoromo. From what you have told me of your instincts, they are already noticeably weaker than my own, though that will not impact on your overall strength." Paused, letting her eldest soak up the information while she inwardly debated over what to do next. "I will have to eventually tell them," she thought, frowning internally, not wanting to let her sons see her inner turmoil. "They need to know the reason why I have trained them." Despite the faith she had in her sons, she was still worried it wasn't enough to face what was coming, or that one of them would do something stupid. "I must have faith in them to do what must be done." Kaguya took a deep breath, willing herself to calm down, while simultaneously squashing the doubts that lingered in her mind. Her children could do this. They had to. Hagoromo Naruto. She called getting the twins' attention. It was quite funny when she thought about it. If she hadn't given birth to the children before her, she would have never thought they were twins. It was almost laughable. One was calm, incredible intelligent, mostly quiet, ripple-eyed, red-haired boy. The other was a sometimes loud white-haired child. White-eyed child that hid his surprising intelligence under his mask, if it could be called that. In fact, the only reason one would think they were related would be the horns that adorned both their heads. Otherwise, they could have been born in two completely different families. Shaking herself out of those thoughts, she returned to the present. It is time I told you why I started your training. This got both boys' attention. As far as they knew, their mother wanted them to control their powers so they wouldn't accidentally kill someone. Noticing her children straightening up, showing how much attention they were paying here, she continued. Almost 13 years ago, I felt a being of some sort gaining power rapidly. At first I thought that someone else had eaten the Shinju's fruit, but I immediately discarded that idea as I had already eaten the fruit some years before. After inspecting the being's energy, I realized that it was incredibly similar to my own chakra. At the time I would have investigated, but the two of you had been born, and I wasn't about to move around with two newborn babies. So I decided to stay here at the monastery. Here she took a breath before continuing to speak. It was only later that I realized what it was, as well as why it was gaining power. It was the Shinju. Ignoring the intake of breath she heard from both her sons, she continued. And the reason it was gaining power or awakening was because it was after its chakra. Here she paused, looking directly at her sons. However, I realized it was not the chakra I possessed, as it was too similar to its own to notice. Otherwise, it would have started to wake as soon as I ate its fruit. No, I realized that what it was after was the chakra my two sons possessed. Hearing this, both sons froze, partially in fear and also shock. How are you meant to fail when you find out that a god is coming after you? Something that couldn't be destroyed, a primordial force, a being with almost unlimited power was coming at you with the single mission to destroy you and most likely anything in its path. To both Hagoromo and Naruto's credit, they didn't cry with the knowledge that their impending doom could be coming. After several minutes of both brothers just staring at nothing, Hagoromo asked the question that plagued both their minds. How long do we have? Hagoromo asked, while his mind went over the importance of the answer both himself and his brother would receive. One answer could give them a little bit of hope that perhaps against all odds, they could win against the beast that they would face in the future. The other answer could devastate them. It could crush all the hope, life, and spirit out of their bodies. Hagoromo prayed it wasn't the latter. I don't know. Kaguya confessed honestly. She truly had no idea how long they would have. It could be anywhere from a day to several years. The only thing I know for sure is that you will face the Shinju eventually. At least we will all face it together, right, cousin? Hagoromo said, while praying that they had several more years to get stronger. When he didn't hear his mother respond, he asked again, this time slightly nervous about the answer. Cousin? Kaguya sighed before answering. No, unfortunately, Hagoromo, I cannot help you defeat the Shinju. Knowing that she was most likely going to get interruptions from Hagoromo and Naruto, she was quick to continue. It is not that I will not help you, but rather I cannot help. Here she sighed. Because the fruit I ate contained its chakra, my chakra is now too similar to it to do any damage. Because all of my attacks are laced with my chakra, all I would be doing is giving it energy to use against you whenever my attacks connect. In fact, if my theory is right, if I get in close enough proximity, it could simply absorb all the chakra I have in my body out through my skin, and since my body is so accustomed to chakra now, the shock my body would feel from losing my chakra would most likely kill me. Here she sighed again. She seemed to be doing that a lot lately. With enough time, my chakra may change so that I might be able to harm the Shinju, but by the time that happens it may have already awoken. Even then it would take so long that by the time my chakra is different from the Shinju's own, I will most likely be an old woman and I won't be able to help you at all, with my body being too frail. After that she stayed silent, knowing they would need a lot of time to fully take everything she told them in. Both boys were completely frozen. Not only would they have to take on an entity that was basically a god, but to do it without their mother. It was a heavy blow. Kachin. This time it was Naruto talking with an oddly serious face. Kaguya could count the number of times Naruto had been truly serious on two hands. Kaguya was snapped out of her internal thoughts by Naruto's voice. Kachin, be honest. Do you think me and Hagoromo have a chance at beating the Shinju? Naruto's voice was neutral, not betraying how he felt. His mother knew that this is an important question for him and Hagoromo, who was silently listening. The mother of two looked between both her sons before responding. I believe that. No. Kaguya was cut off by Naruto's uttering a single word. It wasn't loud, said in a commanding tone, or even accompanied by an action, and yet that single word cut Kaguya off, halting anything she was going to say. Both Kaguya and Hagoromo were surprised by Naruto. I asked you to be honest. Naruto's words were soft yet hard, cutting through the silence of the garden like a warm knife through butter. No, no, I believe, or I feel. Yes or no. After Naruto finished speaking, silence reigned as the two eldest of the Ōtsutsuki family took time to take in what just happened. It was unusual for Naruto to ever demand anything. Even as a child, Naruto rarely wanted anything, preferring to play with what he had. But even a deaf person could have heard the demand that was in Naruto's words. It was a sobering experience for both Hagoromo and Kaguya. It seemed they had been fooled by the childish mask that Naruto wore, having forgotten that underneath there was an intellect that could rival Hagoromo in aspects, and along with what Kaguya believes from what she just heard, a side that can be hard, cold, and mean in every way. It was a real wake-up call for two of the three Ōtsutsuki. It seemed that even they had forgotten just who Naruto could truly be if he wanted to, and were drawn in to believing his mask. While both Kaguya and Hagoromo knew Naruto would never turn evil or use his powers to purposely harm others, it made them pity whoever had Naruto as an enemy. Kaguya blinked before remembering the question. After a few seconds to think about it, she presented her answer to Naruto. Yes, with the right training. Naruto didn't verbally answer, instead choosing to nod his head. After several minutes of silence, it was broken by Hagoromo asking a question. When will we be leaving the monastery? This could mess up some of his projects he had been working on while he was staying in the monastery. Hopefully they wouldn't be leaving soon. Do not worry about your projects, Hagoromo, his mother said as if reading his mind. We will not be leaving for maybe a few years, as both you and your brother must practice with both of your weapons, perhaps even creating individual styles for them if you are proficient enough. Naruto frowned for a second, thinking over the reason for having the weapons, before opening his mouth. But Kachin, I have my chakra channeling for my abnormal strength, and Hagoromo has the Azura path. Why would need weapons at all? But Kaguya shook her head slightly. This is what I mean by not knowing how the world works, she said with slight sorry. In the outside world, it isn't normal for some using hand-to-hand fighting style to beat a samurai or sword wielder. The extra reach of the sword and the sharp blade are usually enough to ward off anyone of fighting someone with them. However, if you defeat anyone with a sword, no matter who it is, it won't attract as much attention as it would if you beat them barehanded. As she finished speaking, the family descended into silence for several moments before Hagoromo asked one last question. Kazan, could I see the technique you used to create my Shikujo and my brother's staff? Creating something from nothing sounds like an interesting ability. Hagoromo inquired. The ability sounded amazing, with its possibilities having the potential to be limitless. Kaguya nodded but gave no verbal reply. She extended her hands and held them out, palms up, while closing her eyes like in meditation. Slowly, a red flame sprung to life in her left, and while simultaneously, a blue one appeared in her right. Both of the flames continued to grow in size, yet there was surprisingly no heat from either of them like a normal flame. The flames stopped growing once they had completely encased both hands in their respective colors. They both continued to flicker and both around like they were swaying in a breeze. Suddenly, Kaguya lifted her hands slightly before turning her palms to face each other, still shrouded in their respective colors, before slammed them together. A bright light exploded out from where her hands met, blinding both the boys, who looked away, and their mother, who closed her eyes, before the light slowly dimmed. As the last of the light faded away and both boys could look at their mother, or more specifically, her palms again, they found her palms now open like flat scroll and occupied. A butterfly, a black and blue butterfly, was calmly in her palms, inspecting its surroundings before it took off, fluttering out of Kaguya's hands and reach. while Hagoromo and Naruto followed it with their distinctive eyes as it flew up, around the garden, and out into the world beyond the monastery. Both boys then turned to their mother wide-eyed. She internally smirked at their expressions, pleased that she could still shock them from time to time. That, she said, was what I like to call Banbutsu Sozo, creation of all things. It has the ability to create anything the wielder desires. After several seconds of stunned silence from Kaguya's children, Naruto leant over and whispered into Hagoromo's ear while his eyes were still focused on his mother. You know how I got over my jealousy of your eyes? Naruto left no space for a reply, instead continuing to whisper. I lied. That was totally cool. Hagoromo chose to ignore him in favor of asking his mother a question. How did you do that? He asked. What did you use? Chakra, she said simply. Well, not chakra entirely, more like the aspects of chakra being used to create something new. Here both Kaguya and Hagoromo missed the pensive look Naruto got on his face. After uncovering my instinctual memories of Banbutsu Sozo, creation of all things, I discovered that two things are required to create chakra. I named the two aspects yin and yang. They represent the spiritual, like my illusions, and physical, like your enhanced strength, respectively. Yin was the blue flame with yang as the red. Yin is used to bring what is imagined into reality, while yang is used to breath and vitality. Together, they create something from nothing. However, this is not a technique to take lightly. It took me years to be able to craft both of your weapons to my standard. When, Hagoromo, and I know you will, try to perform this technique, do not expect to make quick progress. As she finished up her explanation, she decided that they had talked enough today, and that any more information she gave most likely wouldn't stick. As she stood up, she prompted both of them to do the same, which they did, rising with their weapons in hand. That is enough explanation for one day. You both have the rest of the day to work on your own projects. If either of you need anything, I will be in my room resting. As Kaguya traveled back to her room to rest and reflect on the day's events, and Hagoromo decided to meditate in front, he eventually learned not to do it over the pond. Naruto decided to do some training. Arriving in one of the two large former praying rooms, Naruto immediately closed the door to the room, wanting to keep what he was doing under wraps. As he stood in the middle of the room, he raised his arms, creating a 90-degree angle with his palms up, and willed a ball of water to appear in the palm of one hand, while doing the same for a ball of wind to appear in the other. Yin and yang, he murmured, aspects of chakra being used to make something new. He echoed his mother. As he slowly moved both palms and therefore both elements, the ball of wind glowed a dull blue while the water did the same in a dull red color. Finally, both came together, joining completely, and a cool tingling sensation crawled up his arms. Watching closely, he watched as the water froze as it absorbed the ball of wind, and the water and wind disappeared, leaving in their place a completely smooth ball of pure ice hovering just above his left palm. With a mere thought, the newly created ball of ice rose, before flattening itself. The now disk of ice slowly started to rotate at an increasing speed, before it shot forward, slicing through the air like it was a katana through the parchment of a scroll. It went so fast that Naruto actually lost track of it. Suddenly, there was a horrible screeching sound from the wall opposite Naruto's position. Walking towards where the noise originated from, Naruto was greeted a surprising sight. There was no ice disc on the floor or even embedded in the wall. At first, Naruto simply thought that the disc shattered into tiny pieces, but quickly dismissed that thought. The sound he heard didn't match that possibility. Looking around the area, he was about to give up when he noticed something. A thin line, about as thick as two pieces of parchment placed on top of each other, with the width of Naruto's waist if he had to guess. The cut itself was several centimeters deep. Unbelievable, Naruto thought in awe. Such strength in the ice is meant to be impossible. It should have shattered as soon as it hit the wall. It didn't though. Most likely because of a side effect of being made by chakra. This was incredible. Naruto didn't know if the ice disc was still in the ice, but right now he didn't care. The simple fact that the ice had cut the stone was amazing, let alone cutting several centimeters deep. I created ice by combing wind with water, and if what Kazan said is true, some yin and yang chakra, with both of them going into a separate element. If I count fire, water, lightning, wind, and earth as the basic elements. That means there are another 10 possible elements that I can learn. However, this only counts if I only combine 2 elements at a time. What if I combine 3, 4, or even 5 elements at once? Then there are also the elements that aren't composed of others like crystal and metal, and if what my instincts are telling me, although crystal and metal aren't part of the 5 basic elements, and they can't be made by combining chakra natures, I should still be able to use them despite that. Naruto decided to follow his mother's example after discovering his ability to combine elements. Whether this was another ability or he had unlocked another part of his ability to use the elements, he didn't know, but what he did know was that he was tired, both emotionally and physically, and his futon was calling him. Hey, Wall! Town was well known within the land of the Lightning Daimyo, known as one of the most fortified towns in Lightning Country. The village, as the name suggests, has a 10-meter-high wall made of stone that runs around the perimeter, along with numerous guards that were posted along the ramparts of the wall. The addition of the forest that began several meters from the town's wall and circled all the way around, as well as the fact that it was built near the base of a mountain, only added to the defenses the village had. Because of the level of security of the town, it had, over the years, become a trading hub for Lightning Country, with numerous stalls and stands that sold everything from food to clothes to weapons, and, if you knew where to look, slaves. A side effect of the booming business during the day gave the town a seedy underbelly to go with it that was a home to prostitutes, murderers, criminals, and mercenaries alike. The corruption in the village wasn't incredibly high, which was lucky all things considered. The worst case of corruption the town faced so far was a guard being paid to look the other way for a few seconds. But it was bound to get worse eventually. It was midday, with the sun high in the sky, when the guards of the trading hub first spotted something out of the ordinary. It started as a spot that appeared at the end of the road that led to the village, but slowly morphed into 3 silhouettes that then morphed into 3 people in monks' robes. While all 3 had their hoods up, it was obvious that 2 were male, while the last was a female. However, there was a fact about them that made the guards nervous about them. Because Haytown is a trading hub, it also acquired a following of bandits that plagued the roads to and from the village, ambushing anyone they believed they could rob. Because of this, many people had taken to hiring mercenaries and samurai bodyguards to escort them to and from the village. However, the 3 travelers that were approaching the village had no such escort, or at least no escort that the guards could see. This could mean several things. 1. They had hidden guards, which was likely. 2. The 2 males were the guards for the women, which was also likely, but judging from how they all wore monks' clothes, properly not. 3. All their guards had been killed on the way towards the village. However, this had no evidence to suggest that, when the guards die, the clients usually run as fast as they can screaming, but the 3 that were walking calmly. Finally, they could be some of the increasingly rare few who could survive walking around without guards. Usually people who can do that turn into a mercenary. It was the last option that scared the guards the most. Whenever the bandits that stalk the roads become too much of a problem, the samurai are usually ordered to go into the woods to clean them out. This usually involved several losses for the invading party, as the samurai's amour is for one-on-one fights on an open area, not a dense forest that the bandits live in. The amour of the samurai is bulky, meant for endurance, and therefore can't match up against the speed and flexibility that the bandits have with little to no amour on. It was because of all this that the samurai on the ramparts were wary of the 3 travelers. There was no way they could have traveled through the forest without encountering at least one group of bandits. If they could travel through the woods that surrounded the fortified town and come out without a scratch or drop of blood to stain their clothes, the samurai truly doubted that they would be able to do anything but slow them down. As the 3 travelers got closer to the large village gates, the guards that stood outside the village near the gates approached them, all the while inwardly praying that the obviously strong travelers weren't looking to start trouble. As the guards approached, the 2 male figures fell in line with the female one of them on either side, like guards flanking a client. Neither of the approaching guards could see the full faces of the 3 robe-wearing travelers. The only visible part of the face they could see was the mouth, the rest of it being blocked out by a hood attached to the robes they were wearing. It slightly unsettled the guards. The hoods added a bit of menacing aura around them, the kind that instinctively warned people that they were powerful and that to fight them was suicide. "Hello there, travelers," the first guard said, trying to not let his fear show in his voice. "What brings you to Hay Town?" It was the female of the trio that spoke. "Greetings, guardsmen," she said with her voice gave no hint of her mood. "Both I and my sons are wishing to enter your town and stock up on supplies before continuing on our pilgrimage." "You are monks?" he said, surprised and a bit suspicious, momentarily forgetting about the potential strength the three before him could have. "What proof of this claim do you have?" For a moment, none of the three moved, until the two companions reached into their cloaks, while the guards who could see the action all tensed simultaneously. They let their bodies relax, however, when instead of pulling out swords, both of the males pulled out what looked like monk staffs, one with gold rings that made a cling noise as it moves, the other with a gold M-shaped cap on the top. Both of the staves had a shaft made of a strange black metal. "Is this enough proof?" The voice of the woman of the group jarred him out of his thoughts. There was now an undertone of annoyance that the guard recognized, having dealt with many nobles and upper-class visitors before. "I apologize, monk-san," apologized the man, giving a small bow when he did so. "But I had to be certain. You never can let your guard down in times like these. Forgive my rude manners, and please enjoy your stay at Hay Town, the trading hub of the Land of Lightning." As the last bit was said, the guard gave a motion to one of the guards on the stone ramparts, and the large gates of the town opened to the three travelers. Chapter end. Okay, that was Chapter 3. We got new powers, adventure, big boss battles in the future, and a whole lot of other stuff coming. Tell me what you guys think about it in a review, and keep liking my story. Oh, but wait, this last part is just for my reviewers. Make the town's citizens. As the three travelers entered the town, what they saw was something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Every stall, every alleyway, every street, every house, there were people in green spandex. "Mother?" one of the travelers asked in horror. "What is this?" The mother said nothing for a while, simple staring at the town of spandex. "This is one of the reasons I preferred isolation," the mother said in a monotone voice. Suddenly, one of the townspeople appeared right in front of them. "YSH, 3 travelers have come to our great town. I feel such youth. Come, travelers, let us partake in the springtime of youth." The man, if it could be called that, was, like everyone else, wearing a green spandex jumpsuit, with a bowl-cut hairstyle and eyebrows that were moving. "Kachin," the other traveler whispered. "Are his eyebrows moving? How are they so thick? They remind me of caterpillars." Suddenly, what part of the person's face was visible paled. "They just wiggled at me. Kachin, I'm seriously scared." The other son didn't make any movements, but inwardly agreed with his brother. "I know, Naruto," his mother whispered back. "But don't make any sudden movements, and maybe it will leave us alone." Both boys, trusting their mother's advice, stiffened and tried not to move even an eyelid. Unfortunately, it was all for naught. "YSH, come, my new friends. Let us get you some new clothes that will show off your youthfulness. Then we shall all join our annually youth festival. Can I get a YSH?" he screamed. The response scared the shit out of the three travelers, but also made them realize the meaning of the wall. It wasn't meant to keep bandits out. It was meant to keep these people in. Every single person they could see, male and female, young and old, stuck a fist in the air and let out one word. "YSH. They all responded. When the man focused back on his new friends, all he found was empty air. He scratched his head for a moment before grinning. His new friends must have already gone on to buy something to help unlock their youth. The man let out a tear. It was always good to see people let out their inner youth. It brought out such happiness. As he went to go about the rest of his day, he felt a shadow on his back. Turning around, wanting to help the person who was so unyouthful as to step in front of the sun, he spotted no one but could still feel the shadow. Realizing that whatever was blocking out the sun was above him, he looked up. The last thing he would see would be a tower of earth descending onto his village. As he stared at the falling rock, he had one last thought. How unyouthful. The massive pile of earth then crushed the village, hitting the earth with a mighty slam that was felt for miles around. Several miles away, on top of a bare hill that overlooked where the village once was, 3 people in monks' robes were standing, the same ones that had the encounter with the thing in green, as they called him. This will never be spoken about ever again, the mother said with a hard tone. Both her sons immediately nodded, not wanting to waste any more time and wanting to put as much distance between them and remains of the village as quickly as possible. It would only be much later that people would wonder why a mountain from one of the mountain ranges that littered the country under the lightning daimyo had suddenly moved around 100 kilometers from its original position. It would be a day later that a passing couple would find a baby wrapped in a bundle in the woods, and thinking it was abandoned, they would decide to take it home. As the woman unwrapped the bundle to see the baby, it was revealed to have a mini bowl haircut and bush eyebrows. As the baby looked up at her, it gurgled out a word. Yash. The people would think nothing of it and take the child back to their home. Chapter 4. The village that the three hooded travelers found themselves in was a lively one. There were stalls that lined the street that constantly had several customers at any one time. Children were walking along with parents, pointing out to their parents the things they would like from the various stalls that lined the street. All in all, it was quite a surreal experience for all three of the travelers. Would that be how my sons act, had I not taken them away and trained them? It was quite strange how to see the various children that were around and imagine her sons taking their place. She couldn't quite imagine it. The mere thought of calm and patient Hagoromo jumping up and down pointing at something he wanted seemed so ridiculous. Even Naruto acting like these children seemed far-fetched, because while he was a ball of energy when he was younger, he had never really asked for anything. So the idea of him demanding something like these children, and in some cases, throwing a temper tantrum, was laughable at best. Oblivious to their mothers thought the two men on either side of her, with staves in hand, looked around at the houses, stalls, and people. The majority of their thoughts were on how weak all of them looked. Having been raised and trained by their mother, who valued and prized strength, it was quite hard to see these people as anything but weak. While Hagoromo tried to look at this from the people perspective, thinking about how they didn't have chakra or how they didn't have someone like his mother to guide them, Naruto had no such qualms. By Kami, these people are so weak. He mentally raved. I know they don't have chakra, but most of these people look like they've never been in a fight in their life. It's ridiculous. A strong wind from me could blow most of these people over. While Naruto's views on the residents of the village may seem harsh, Naruto had experienced a mental maturing over the 3 or so years since they had been told of what Hagoromo and himself would have to face in the future. The now 16-year-old had become more serious, only becoming his old self in rare moments to help lower the tension between his mother and brother. The white-haired boy inwardly frowned when he thought over the tension between his mother and brother. Hagoromo's rising determination to help the innocent people of the elemental nations had started to cause a rift between him and his mother, who still maintained the belief that will had to be destroyed for peace. In Naruto's opinion, Hagoromo's belief on how peace should be achieved is idealistic and foolish, bordering on stupid. Though don't get Naruto wrong. He wished that achieving peace would be as easy as Hagoromo says it is, but Naruto knows that won't be the truth. Peace will be achieved through blood and war by mistakes. That is how Naruto believes that peace will be made, when people realize their own stupidity. Naruto believes that both his brother's and mother's method to peace has the same problem. What happens when they were gone to enforce the peace? When he had asked this question to his mother and brother, both had simply said that they would choose a successor. What successor? Naruto mentally swore. The one that will magically pop out of the ground with the power, wisdom, and desire to uphold their own version of peace, with the ability to choose the perfect successor for themselves as well. What happens if they become corrupt? It's impossible. Besides, who has chakra other than the three of yous? Unless one of them wants to ask the Shinju for the job. Naruto asked himself sarcastically. Let's go, my sons. His mother's voice snapped him out of his thinking. It is time to go get supplies before we find somewhere to rest for the night. Tomorrow we must be out of the village by mid if we are to reach our destination at our desired time. Once we have bought the food we need, we will seal it in one of Hagoromo's scrolls when we reach a private place. As she finished speaking, she started to walk forward and into the maze of stalls. Both boys made no sound, instead setting off after their mother, wanting to make sure they kept her in their sights. The town was incredibly large, and with no indication of where you were going, it was easy to get lost or lose the people you were traveling with. Naruto realized both of these things as he wandered around a relatively deserted street a couple of hours later. It was obviously one of the darker areas of the town that his mother had warned him about. He could feel the eyes of people in the shadows of alleyways. The gazes that were full of hostile intent that would make a lesser man a nervous wreck, but Naruto was not a lesser man. He had done and seen things that would make the fools in the shadows die of fear. Simply looking at him with the desire to kill him wasn't going to do a thing beyond piss him off. He was so caught up in his thoughts that he almost didn't feel the small hand that tried to sneakily weave itself under his robe from behind and search around for something. Utilizing his reflexes, Naruto spun around and grabbed the hand at the wrist with his free hand, causing the owner of the hand to start trying to yank it away to no avail. Turning to the perpetrator, he was surprised to find it to be a little girl, no older than 7 or 8, wearing what, at one point in time, looked like to be clothes but no appeared to be rags that hung from her body. She had blonde hair, a surprising color, with violet eyes that looked at him with fear. When the girl realized that she wasn't going to get her hand free, she started to cry. Slowly at first, but eventually the girl started crying like there was no tomorrow, wet tracks staining her cheeks. She seemed to be mumbling something, but it was impossible to tell underneath all of her crying. Naruto looked around in hope that someone would help him, maybe take the kid off his hands, or even tell him what to do because he sure as hell didn't. It was obvious she was an orphan. The rags were enough to give that away. The question was, though, why wasn't she in an orphanage? He knew that there had to be one in the village. Eventually, Naruto decided to try and calm the girl down. Bending down to her level, his hand still around her wrist, he tried to talk to the girl. "Hey, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, all right?" He asked in what he hoped was a calming tone. All he was going off was what his mother told him she did when he used to cry as a baby. He didn't know if it would work, but it was all he had at the moment. Thankfully, it appeared to be enough, and the girl finally seemed to stop crying and was starting to hiccup, but the tears still streaked down her face. It was actually saddening to him. He didn't even know why. Maybe it's my brother rubbing off on me with his protect the innocent stuff. Naruto thought idly. Deciding that he wouldn't be able to get this child to stop crying in the middle of the street, he extended his senses out and found that a dead-end alleyway that wasn't occupied by people he would have to kill. Deciding that it would be better to go down the alley before one of his watchers decided to attack him, Naruto picked the girl up and settled her so that she was being held in one arm while the other continued to hold his staff. When Naruto lifted the girl up, she gave a yelp in surprise before freezing up in his arms. He idle wondered why that was before choosing to just ask her why. Walking to the very end of the alley, Naruto sat himself down on his behind, the staff beside him, and the still frozen girl now settled in his lap, and pulled the girl into a hug like he remembered his mother used to. The girl was still frozen at first, but slowly moved her arms around his neck and once again started to cry. Naruto at first thought he'd done something wrong and was going to pull away, until he realized just why this girl was crying. His mother had mentioned that sometimes people will cry for different reasons other than being sad. Perhaps this was one of them? Anyway, Naruto continued to hold the poor girl while she cried, until all that came out were hiccups again, before he slowly felt her stop moving. She wasn't dead. Naruto could tell by the rise and fall of her chest, so that only left asleep. She cried herself to sleep? Naruto thought confused. I didn't know you could do that. Kami, the rest of the world is weird. After thinking about it a bit, Naruto decided to stay where he was and wait for the blonde girl to wake up. There was no point in searching for his mother and brother as they would find him eventually, and he wasn't going to wake up the girl now. She looked exhausted if the bags under her eyes were any indication, and frankly Naruto couldn't muster up the energy to wake her. It was almost an hour before the girl woke up. As she opened her eyes wearily and blinked out the blurriness that had invaded her vision, she thought back to the last thing she remembered. I was trying to steal something from some guy in a dress when he caught me and... The girl's eyes snapped open as she remembered what happened and her body froze. It was then she realized that she had her arms around the stranger's neck and her head on his shoulder. At first she thought he was asleep, but this theory was proved wrong when he spoke to her. "Are you awake now, girl?" he asked. "Are you going to tell me why you wanted to steal from me?" The voice held no accusation or anger, only curiosity, though it was not like the girl's mind could tell the difference between them. As she started to tremble, The blonde-haired girl heard the man sigh. Look, girl, I'm not going to hurt you, okay? If I wanted to hurt you, I could have done that when you were sleeping. This didn't seem to help the girl as she continued to tremble. Naruto was about to speak again when he heard her mumble something over and over again from his shoulder. I'm sorry, she murmured, the fear obvious in her voice. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, just don't hurt me. At the end, she tightened her grip around his neck, not enough to hurt the male, but enough to be noticeable. Naruto didn't say anything for a minute, simply thinking over what the girl had said and what he could do. Finally, he just decided to do what his mother did when he was little. The girl flinched at first when she first felt something touch her back, but as she screwed her eyes closed and tensed her body, waiting for the hit, she felt nothing. Slowly relaxing after she didn't feel any pain, she realized that the man was putting his arms around her. It's okay, he whispered in her ear. Don't worry, girl, you're safe. I promise. As she finally realized that no strike would come from the person holding her, she began to relax into the embrace. Slowly, however, the man tried to pull himself out of the hug, but the girl had other ideas, clinging to the man like ink to parchment. No, the girl cried internally. Please don't go, please. She didn't want this stranger to go. He was nice. He gave her a hug. He made her feel safe, and she wanted him to stay. The man, as if sensing her pleas, chuckled. Don't worry, girl, I'm not going anywhere. I just want to get a look at you, okay? The girl didn't move for a few seconds before very slowly eased herself off him until she was sitting back on his lap with his arms on her shoulders to reassure her that he wouldn't leave. It was then she realized that she couldn't see his face, as it was underneath a hood. Now, are you going to tell me why you tried to steal from me? He asked with a questioning tone. The girl seemed to squirm under his invisible gaze that she could feel staring her straight in the eye. She then looked down and mumbled something inaudible. What was that? Naruto asked the girl. A little bit loud next time, okay. The girl, still looking down, gave her answer. I was hungry, she said quietly. The words, while louder than before, were still quiet. Naruto internally frowned, being careful to not show it on his face, lest he scare the poor girl. While his mother had told both himself and Hagoromo about how some people couldn't eat because sometimes there wasn't enough food, but there was plenty in this town, he had gotten lost in shops that sold food. How could she be hungry? Are you not being fed enough? He asked. Do people not give you enough food to eat? The answer made Naruto's blood boil and his chakra surge. No one gives me anything, the girl said with her head still down to avoid the man's gaze, not wanting to see the disappointed look that she knew would be on his face. I have to steal stuff to eat. After using several meditation techniques he knew to calm himself down, Naruto knew that if he didn't before he asked another question, the answer would most likely go on a rampage. Why are you on the street? Don't you have an orphanage to go to? Naruto questioned, while praying that the answer was good enough to not warrant him going on a killing spree. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I don't know what an orphanage is, she said, trying to sound out the word orphanage, but I lost my Kachin and Tuchan. She continued, sniffling at the end. I don't know where they are. Tears were appearing in the corners of her eyes. Naruto, to his credit, didn't show any outward reaction. Internally, however, was a different story. So she isn't an orphan, just lost. He thought. That's a bit better. I thought I might have had to do something drastic. Thankful, his thoughts of violence were halted by a question from the girl. Man-san, why are you wearing a dress? I thought only girls could wear dresses. After that comment, the girl's 7-year-old mind came to one conclusion. Man-san, are you really a girl? That question was met by utter silence. A twitch developed above Naruto's eyebrow gave away his annoyance. No, it's not a dress, and I'm not a woman. He managed to get out. Why would she think he's wearing a dress? But I see other women wear stuff like that, she asked with a childlike innocence. Childlike innocence, my ass. Naruto thought. She's asking these questions on purpose, I know it. Naruto inhaled a deep breath of air to calm down before he did something he regretted. Girl, it's not a dress, it's a monk's robe. As he saw the girl open her mouth, most likely to tell him that it was a dress, he quickly asked another question to help divert the girl's attention. What's your name, kid? The little girl smiled at the question, happy that someone seemed to be paying attention to her. My name's Akari. What's yours? She asked curiously. To Naruto's happiness, she seemed to have forgotten he was wearing a dress. Thank Kami for children's short attention span. He idly thought. My name's Naruto. Nice to meet you, Akari. Naruto smiled, reassuring the violet-eyed child. Giving the child a look over, Naruto noted that she seemed quite thin, more so than a normal child for her age should be. She must be starving. He noted. After pondering what to do for a minute, Naruto decided to take the child to get something to eat for her, as well as for himself. It was definitely past lunch, if the sun's position in the sky was any indication. Smiling to the girl, he was about to ask her what she wanted to eat, when his senses alerted him to the fact that they weren't alone in the alley. Turning his attention to the entrance of the alley, he noted that it was just some of the lowlifes that plagued the area he was in. He was about to give them the opportunity to leave when he felt Akari wrap her arms around his neck and tense. His observations were cut off by the leader of the thugs speaking to him. All right, boy, time to hand over all your money. Do that, and we won't hurt you or your little friend, the leader of the thugs said. Judging by the not-so-quiet snickering that was going on behind him, it was obvious that he wasn't going to keep true to his word. Naruto idly noted that he was going to have to knock these people out to avoid any more conflict. While he could kill them, and he wouldn't really bat an eye at getting rid of the scum before him, he didn't know about how that would affect the girl that was currently clinging to him like a lifeline with her head buried in his shoulder. Both Hagoromo and himself had killed before on the trek from the monastery to the town they were currently in. They had been told by their mother why they should kill some people. Even Hagoromo, with his goal to save the world with peace, understood that sometimes people had to be killed to save the peace. He wouldn't go around killing unless there was no choice, but he still understood why he needed to kill. Naruto, on the other hand, understood that people needed to die in order to make the world a better place. He understood that in order to help the world that you sometimes had to get dirty. While Naruto wouldn't kill anyone that got in his way like his mother most likely would, he wouldn't make killing a last resort either. He would kill when he thought the world could do better without the person in front of him, but wouldn't kill people just because he didn't like them. Unfortunately, the girl he was holding knew nothing about that. She was 7 after all. Reasons for killing someone shouldn't even occur to her. However, she most likely knew that killing was wrong, and therefore would most likely assume Naruto was evil, not that he was. Naruto's and Hagoromo's mother, over the course of 3 years, drilled into them just what the rest of the world thought was normal. A person killing several people when it wasn't their job description, especially when they had the power to knock them out, was not normal and could get Naruto into trouble if anyone caught him. So knocking them out was the best course of action, he decided. First, however, he had to get Akari off him so he could move properly. Akari, he whispered in her ear. Don't worry, I won't let them hurt you, I promise. Just let me get up and I'll deal with them. His words seemed to work, and slowly the girl got off him to sit by his side. Naruto then got up while grabbing his staff and slowly walking towards the thugs. You know, he said, as if nothing was wrong. I'm going to give all you bastards a concussion. With that, he launched himself forward, smashing the leader across the side of his head with the end of his staff. While the lead thug was still falling to the ground, he quickly spun around to the right while twirling his staff. From there, it was easy for the bottom of his weapon to impact on the thug's stomach, causing him to double over, only to receive a kick to the face for his troubles, sending him into unconsciousness. By this time, the rest of the thugs had finally gotten their act together and went to charge what they thought would be, easy prey because of their numbers. They got a shock, however, when their prey fought back, dropping low and sweeping his staff underneath their legs, causing all of them to topple over like a stack of cards. A single hit to the head while they were on the ground ended the consciousness of 3 thugs, while the remaining 2 of the thugs got back up. This stumped Naruto, as he didn't remember giving those 2 concussions yet. The first thug got his legs swept out from under him, and while he was still in the air, was smashed in the head with the top end of Naruto's staff, breaking his nose. The second thug stopped just before Naruto, seeming to be contemplating his chances against the cloaked figure. Unfortunately, he didn't get that chance. An object coming at him caused him to instinctively catch it. It took only a second to recognize the staff that had taken out his friends. Looking up, the last thing he saw was a bare foot flying towards his face before blacking out. He would wake up a day later with a massive headache and a broken nose. Naruto picked up his staff after the thug dropped it, while brushing off some non-existent dirt. Turning towards the girl, he found her with wide eyes and open mouth, She was obviously shocked, and if not for the malnutrition and rags that were evident, it might have been comical. That was so cool. She yelled. You used the stick. Naruto's sweat dropped when she called his staff a stick. And you whacked them all on the head, and then they fell down, and it was so cool. Teach me how to do that. Please, please. I promise I'll be good. Please. She begged as she ran up and tugged on his dress. Naruto just chuckled as her hyper-personality. It reminded him of when he was her age. Sorry, Akari, maybe some other time, he said, ruffling her hair. In the meantime, let's find your family. Do you know where your Tuchan works? No, she replied, before scrunching her nose up. But one time Kachin said to Tuchan that she wanted to play with some metal in his metal shop once. Does that help? If Naruto was drinking any water when he heard that, he would have most likely choked in surprise, though thankfully he wasn't. At least if helped, though, from what Akari said, then her father was most likely a blacksmith, or at the very least works with metal. Okay, Akarikan, I think I know where your Tuchan works, Naruto announced. Really, you do? She said excitedly. Was he telling the truth? Would she get to see her parents again? When Naruto nodded, she yelled in happiness before hugging his leg and looking up at him with a smile, until she realized something. Hey, Naruto-nizan. Naruto raised an eyebrow, not that she could see it, at the suffix. Can I see your face? Or are you ugly? She questioned. Naruto would have face planted if the small girl wasn't holding on to his leg. How could she not know that she was insulting him? There was no way she was doing this by accident. First with his robes, and now with his face. Was nothing untouchable to this girl? Knowing she would most likely keep questioning why he wouldn't show his face, Naruto brought his hands up to the top of his hood and pulled it back. The face that was revealed would have made many older girls swoon. White hair that was folded into his robe to its length, as well as to not hinder himself while fighting. Pure white eyes that looked incredibly similar to his mother's, except that his mother's had a visible pupil and his was completely white. Along with that went an angular face, high cheekbones, and what could be a muscular build that was revealed in the neckline and hidden by the robe. Thank Kami for mother's illusions, Naruto thought, thinking about the horns on his head that were hidden behind his mother's abilities, before pulling his hood back up before looking down at the girl. Happy now? He asked the child. She smiled up at him, showing off her teeth. Yes, she said simply. Good, now let's find your family. And with that, Naruto walked completely out of the alley and out onto the open street before walking back in the direction she originally came, with a 7-year-old girl holding one of his hands and his staff in the other. They had been searching for Akari's father's work for around an hour now, and they had visited 4 of the 7 blacksmiths in the large town. Akari was now tired. Thankfully, she had her Nizan who could pick her up while she slept. Her Nizan was awesome like that. Naruto was walking towards their next blacksmith, hoping this was the right one, otherwise his mother and brother would properly get angry, and with how his mother hates being around inferior people, she might do something drastic. Walking into the shop with Akari on his hip, head resting on his shoulder, Naruto gently shook her awake while taking a look at what was in sale. While Naruto had no intention of buying anything besides the fact that he didn't have enough money for any of the things that were on display, doesn't mean that he can't get ideas for other weapons from them. After receiving his staff and katana from his mother, Naruto always felt a bit vulnerable when using both of the gifts in a weapons-only match. Because all it took was one false move to have his weapon removed, and he would find himself defenseless. Naruto had wanted a weapon that wouldn't give him that vulnerability. However, his mother had told him that she had no knowledge of such weapons that wouldn't have that weakness, while his brother said that neither did the archives of the monastery. This didn't mean that he wasn't skilled in using the staff or katana. Naruto was actually really skilled using both weapons when he put the weakness out of his mind. It just left him always feeling vulnerable. The only thing that Kaguya suggested was tying a strong braid of string around his weapon and attaching it to his wrist, but Naruto didn't want some makeshift solution. He wanted a weapon that wouldn't give him such an obvious weakness in a weapons fight. So instead, Naruto thought about designing a new kind of weapon. He had the design of the weapon as well as most of the parts, but he didn't have enough Ryo to buy the amount of metal he wanted, and he had no idea where to find some if he wanted to shape it himself. Naruto was cut out of his thoughts by the sound of someone dropping a piece of metal and it hitting the floor. Turning his gaze to the source of the noise, his white eyes came across a middle-aged man with brown hair, and violet eyes with bags under them that were wide in shock. He was behind the counter where people would bring up what they would by wearing a blacksmith's apron over his plain brown tunic. "Akari," he whispered in shock before snapping out of it and practically yelling out his next word. "Akari." The girl in question's head snapped around from looking at the various weapons on display before turning to a familiar voice. Her eyes came across someone she thought she would never see again. "Touchin'," she yelled, while wriggling in Naruto's arms in an obvious sign to get down, to which Naruto obliged and placed the girl on the ground and watched as she ran to the man with open arms and tears in her eyes. The man copied the gesture and picked the girl up and held her close while she started to sniffle. Naruto stayed away and let the father and daughter have their moment. After a minute or two, the man moved Akari to the side so he could see and thank the person who brought his daughter home. Both his wife and himself thought they were never going to see her again. His wife was actually back at their house crying because she thought she would never see her daughter again. "Thank you for bringing Akari back to her family," he said with the beginning of tears in his eyes. "If there is anything you want, please just take it. It is the least both me and my wife can do for bringing our daughter home." He used both of his hands to hold said daughter comfortably. It had appeared that she fell asleep, though no one could really blame her. They didn't know when she last had a good night's sleep. "It's okay, Blacksmith-san, you don't have to give me anything," Naruto insisted. He really did. He had to get back to his mother and brother before they skinned him alive for having to wait so long for him. He knew they wouldn't look for him unless it was late, and judging by how the sun was slowly ending its run across the sky, it might be getting late. "No, please, I insist. You must take something, anything, from my shop. You don't even have to use it. It's just to help me feel better that I paid you back for saving my daughter. It can even be just some scrap metal that I have in the back. Please just take something to help me clear my conscience," the father begged, though he missed when Naruto froze for a second when he said scrap metal. Naruto quickly thought for a minute. Well, he did want to give me something, and he would most likely throw away all that metal. The hooded monk thought before addressing the blacksmith holding his daughter. "Exactly how much scrap metal do you have, Blacksmith-san?" Naruto smiled. "Oh yes, today will be a good day indeed." Hagoromo Ōtsutsuki didn't know how his brother managed to push all the right buttons to get on his nerves, but he would like to find out. A lot of the time he seemed to do it on purpose, like when they were little, but lately it seemed he was doing it unintentionally. It didn't matter how he was doing. All that mattered was that his brother was seriously going to get it when he got back for leaving him alone with his mother. Both of them were standing in front of the place they would be staying in for the night. It was just a regular inn that had some spare rooms. Nothing too fancy, nothing too cheap. It wasn't that he didn't like her. On the contrary, Hagoromo loved his mother just like he used to when he was boy. But lately there has been a lot of tension lately about how peace should be achieved. It was something that shouldn't be a problem, but it was. Hagoromo's constant belief that love was the answer seemed to, not anger, but annoy his mother. He felt that his mother was trying to show him some hole in his belief that he was not seeing, while he was also trying to do to her, but he just wasn't seeing it. Peace had turned into a constant argument in their family, and it seemed that his brother was caught in the crossfire with both his mother and himself trying to convert him to their belief. Speaking of his brother, he had showed that despite not having to Rinnegan and its supposed good-like power, that he was still a force to be reckoned with. Just before they were leaving to find a larger area for training, Naruto told both his mother and himself of his ability to combine the elements to create what he calls sub-elements or second-tier elements. At first, both himself and his mother thought it was a joke and that he had just used water and lowered its temperature, freezing it to create ice or something similar. They were shut up, though, when Naruto opened his mouth to spew out lava that crashed into the floor with a hiss. He then proceeded to wave his arm, and the lava seemed to collect itself into a sphere before Naruto flung it out of the monastery. After both Hagoromo and Kaguya got their jaws of the ground, they asked what else Naruto could do, and Naruto replied that he had mastered 4 of the sub-elements in 3 years and was currently working on another, but didn't go into what elements exactly were. When asked how he did it, Naruto told them that he believed that it was the result of infusing spiritual and physical energy into separate elements, and that thanks to his instincts that he gained, he could separate chakra into its 2 energies instantly. Naruto also expressed a word of warning that neither of them should try it. When both of them asked why that was, Naruto told them that when he creates a sub-element manually, as he called, which involved getting the separate elements to slowly move together. He noticed that when he split chakra into physical and spiritual energy, he noticed that there was an equal amount of both energies. When Naruto decided to see what would happen with unequal energies, the result wasn't pretty. The overpowered energy suffocated the underpowered one, and the result was both elements exploding violently. Naruto admitted that if his chakra couldn't unconsciously heal him, that he would have died. His mother then proceeded to drag him into the dirt area in the garden and then beat him up for a couple of hours as punishment for being a kama-forsaken idiot. Thoughts of his brother's improvement also made him remember his own. Hagoromo had proved that he was quite skilled using his shakujo and katana, more so than his brother, which was a surprise for him, since his brother usually excelled in the physical areas of combat. Though after his brother had told him about how vulnerable he felt with the weapons, he understood why. It would be like learning how to write with his opposite hand. Not impossible, just uncomfortable, and would take a while to get used to. Though when his brother told him about a weapon he was going to design that would suit him, Hagoromo expressed his doubts. After all, while Naruto was competent in his plans, they usually ended with some sort of explosion. Hagoromo actually commented that he thought he might have been using the explosions like an element. Hagoromo didn't like the glint that appeared in his brother's eye when he said that. Thinking about explosions then made Hagoromo think about not really a new ability he uncovered, but more like a new application for chakra, like when Naruto made his chakra heal himself. During his early teen years, Hagoromo had been searching in the archives of the monastery when he uncovered a book talked about symbols that did things when applied in the right ways. Obviously, when Hagoromo drew a symbol on some spare paper, nothing happened, but that got him thinking, what if he could use them with chakra? Obviously, just ink wouldn't work, but what if he could use chakra somehow to power the symbols much like his chakra powered his techniques from his Rinnegan? That was when Hagoromo discovered that if he channeled chakra onto the ink, that symbol came alive and did what the book said it was meant to. Unfortunately, the symbol had been one for fire, and it was only thanks to him coating his hands in chakra that he escaped with it. From then until they had to leave the monastery, Hagoromo had practiced what he called fuinjutsu sealing techniques. While recording all he did, as well as writing out ideas for new seals that he wanted to try out in a book he now carried on himself. It was thanks to his fuinjutsu that the group could carry all they wanted without bags, using what he called storage seals that he placed on scrolls. He then therefore called the product of the two storage scrolls. Though he got quite angry when Naruto just casually tossed the scroll up in the air when he first got it, didn't he know all the blood, sweat, and tears, not to mention the explosions that occurred when he developed the scrolls. Hagoromo was also trying to work out a solution to defeat the Shinju using fuinjutsu. Both he and Naruto know that defeating the tree god in a drawn-out fight is nearly impossible. The beast is a god for a reason, or at least part god according to their mother, not that it makes much of a difference in the end. He had decided that sealing the beast in something would be the best option. The only question now was what to seal it in. That was the question that he was pondering. Maybe Naruto would have some ideas. The white-haired 16-year-old could be quite smart when he was serious when he wanted to. Hagoromo was drawn out of his thoughts by an approaching chakra source that dwarfed his own. That was another thing. Over the years, Naruto's chakra system had grown to an enormous size. So much so that it was almost 2.5 times the size of Hagoromo's own and almost double the size of his mother's, and that was without adding the fact that Naruto's chakra was also denser than normal. Although that was really just based of the three people. Naruto chakra, however, was still smaller than the Shinju's own chakra, though from what Naruto could sense of the beast's growing chakra, after his mother told both Hagoromo and Naruto how to sense it, he had around a third of part god's chakra, though it was still gaining more at a faster pace than Naruto could. Though that was to be expected, the Shinju was at least part god. Turning towards where he felt his brother's chakra coming from, Hagoromo used his eyes to spot him. However, as soon as he did lay eyes on him, he was instantly wary. Naruto was smiling, and while he couldn't see the rest of his face due to the hood, the smile was all he really needed to know something was wrong. It wasn't the happy, joyful, excited sort of smile. It was the I'm involved in something dangerous smile that was only on display when something pointy or explosive was involved. Observing as his brother, Hagoromo noted that there was nothing abnormal and slightly relaxed. Perhaps he was wrong. False alarm. Hagoromo idly noted that his mother had also sensed his brother's approach and was also wary of the smile that he had on. Like mother, like son, I guess. Hagoromo thought offhandedly. When his brother finally reached them, he noted that he still hadn't lost the smile. What's with the smile, Naruto? Hagoromo asked as soon as Naruto was close enough, accusation in his voice. Why, Hagoromo? What in Kami's name made you think that I am smiling for any reason other than? Naruto's happy voice trailed off after he noticed that both his mother and brother had their arms crossed. He could feel their stares. Naruto pouted. Oh, fine, he said with the pout almost visible in his voice. I'll show you when we enter our room. It took barely 5 minutes before Naruto was sitting on a futon in a room of the inn. They were just outside 5 minutes before. Now with their cloaks off, Naruto could see his brother's and mother's face. Both of them hadn't changed much in 3 years, just like himself. The only really noticeable thing was that Hagoromo had kept his hair short and his horns had grown longer, much like Naruto's own. Okay, Naruto, what's with the grin? Kaguya questioned with a raised eyebrow. Naruto just smiled at his mother before he pushed his hands into his robe and removed about 30 or so metal balls. There was nothing really noticeable about them other than all of them were perfectly smooth and round, no imperfections on any of them. They're metal balls, Naruto, Hagoromo said, raising an eyebrow. Naruto inwardly smirked. Both Hagoromo and his mother were more similar than they let on. What's so special about them? Naruto simply smiled. Both Kaguya and Hagoromo were wondering if the other member of their family finally lost it before said family member's eyes started to glow a dark gray, and all of the metal balls rose up from Naruto's palms and started to circle around Naruto. Both Kaguya and Hagoromo were wide-eyed at the display. Moving metal was something beyond even the Rinnegan, so to see it being manipulated so easily was a shock. Both of them were jarred from their staring by Naruto's voice. Remember when I said I would make a weapon that doesn't need to be held? Naruto asked them. His family members nodded, still looking at the balls that had now stopped rotating and were hovering above Naruto's head. I now have all the pieces I need to make it, he said. Son and mother were about to question what blade he was talking about when the metal balls that were hovering around started to come together until 4 groups were formed. 2 of the 4 groups possessed the same amount of balls, while the other 2 groups also had the same amount of metal balls, though they had a significantly less amount than the first 2 groups. What happened next surprised the eldest members of the Ōtsutsuki family. The metal came together and melded, the metal balls of each group seeming to melt together, forming a metal ball that was the size of all the metal balls of that group combined. Once each of the groups had all their metal balls absorbed into one, they then started to elongate, becoming sharp and pointed much like a knife. When all of the groups stopped morphing, both Kaguya and Hagoromo were left looking at 4 blades of metal. 2 of them were large with the length and width of Naruto's forearm, with a slit down the middle of the metal. The smaller pair of blades were much thinner and more streamlined than the larger blades. This is what I'm going to make, Naruto said, breaking Hagoromo and Kaguya out of their observations of his blades. Both pairs of blades moved down until one of each was set around Naruto's wrist. The larger ones were above his wrist, resting on his forearms, while the smaller, slimmer pair rested underneath his wrists. I'm going to make dual wrist-mounted blades. Here he moved the larger 2 blades forward until both of the blades stuck out while still being attached to his forearms. The larger 2 blades are made for front-on sword battles. They are light enough and thin enough to keep up with Tanto, but strong enough to hold up against something like a katana. I can also use them to block surprise attacks with my forearm when both blades are retracted, Naruto explained. He then moved the large blades back and had the smaller pair move forward. The glint of light that the metal gave off, as well as how small it was, gave off an unassuming appearance. But both Kaguya and Hagoromo knew from experience that Naruto would never keep something that didn't help him in some way. The smaller blades are for surprise attacks that enemies won't expect, as well as deflecting attacks and killing silently. Naruto then retracted that pair of blades as well, before looking up at his brother's and mother's face, paying no attention to the surprised looks on their faces before he continued with his explanation. All I need know is a way to extend both blades that doesn't involve me getting stabbed. What I've got so far is Hagoromo doing something with Fuinjutsu that will allow me to use chakra to extend and retract both pairs of blades. When he finally finished speaking, he observed his family's faces. wanting to see how they felt about it. Kaguya seemed shocked and proud of him, shocked at the kind of weapon he made and proud that he could make something at that level. Hagoromo, on the other hand, seemed shocked and curious. Shocked because of the weapon, but why would he be curious? Because of the kind of weapon it was. Because of metal manipulation he showed, or was it because he asked to help use his Fuinjutsu to help create a weapon? It is an interesting weapon you have thought up, Naruto. Kaguya told Naruto after several seconds. It has the potential to be amazing. Yes, brother. Hagoromo agreed. Your design is incredible. I will try to design a ceiling array that will allow you to do as said, but it will definitely take time to create. Here Hagoromo got a slight smirk. Unless you want to learn Fuinjutsu and help me with creating the array. How long will it take you? Naruto asked. He didn't want to have to wait long for his dual blades to be completed. A year, maybe more. Hagoromo replied and waited for the inevitable outburst. What? Naruto exclaimed. A year. Why would it take you so long? He whined. Hagoromo's rippled eyes immediately hardened. Have you forgotten just what we will be fighting in the future, brother? I am devoting much of my spare time to finding a way to get rid of the beast using Fuinjutsu. Hagoromo replied in an icy tone. Naruto quickly stiffened and sat up straighter. In that case, I will also learn Fuinjutsu, he replied, his voice becoming serious and his eyes narrowing. Not just for my own array, but to also help you, Hagoromo, find a way to get rid of the Shinju. Hagoromo smiled. It was times like this when he was glad his brother could be serious. Thank you, Naruto. I will be glad to accept your assistance. The eldest Ōtsutsuki male then became serious again. However, now that we are here, I believe that we should discuss ways to deal with our foe. I agree, Nissen, said Naruto. If we are to defeat the Shinju, we must start planning immediately. Here Naruto took a deep breath. Why most likely will not be able to overpower the beast. Even combined, we will not have enough chakra. Therefore, our only option is to trap it somewhere it can't escape. Hagoromo expressed his own thoughts. Correct, Naruto. Our best option would be to trap it and hold it somewhere. I have also believed this to be our only option for a while now. As I said before, I have been looking to Fuinjutsu for the answer to our problems. So far, the only answer that I have come up with is to seal the beast inside something to keep it contained. Here, though, Hagoromo's expression turned grim. Unfortunately for us, I have no idea about anything that can contain a being of such power. An animal is a possibility, but then so is the possibility that the Shinju's conscious will override the animal's mind and take control. An inanimate object is defiantly a no. While inanimate objects do have the ability to contain chakra, the Shinju simply has too much chakra to be contained in an inanimate object. Hagoromo took a deep breath before continuing. The only object I could come up with would be either you or myself, Naruto. There was silence in the room after Hagoromo's confession of their options with Fuinjutsu. Kaguya, who had been standing silently while her two sons had their conversation, could do nothing but watch the grim looks on their faces. She knew she would be no help in this kind of conversation. Any ideas she had wouldn't work. As they said already, they couldn't overpower the creature, and they were already talking about trapping it using Fuinjutsu. What could she contribute to a discussion about a subject she had no clue over? While Hagoromo watched his brother's face, Naruto's brain was currently running over all their options in his head, trying to find anything they had missed or overlooked in their discussions. Could we destroy it using Fuinjutsu? Naruto asked suddenly, looking at Hagoromo. What? He said, startled by his brother's words. Destroy it with Fuinjutsu. Can we do it? He repeated, looking at his brother. You once said that the limit with Fuinjutsu was one's imagination. Would it be possible to absorb all its chakra using Fuinjutsu? Hagoromo said nothing for several minutes, thinking over his brother's proposal. Hagoromo then shook his head and sighed. It is possible, Naruto, but there are several problems with that. 1. We would have to keep the Shinju in a certain area while the seal takes effect. The seal would have to be on the ground, as it would be impossible to grab onto the beast and carve the seal onto the skin. Then we don't know how long it would take, or even if we could keep it there. Remember, we have no idea of any of its abilities. For all we know, it could fly just like you, Naruto. 2. Where would all of its chakra go? Because it would have to go somewhere. There are just far too many high-level risks involved in trying to absorb its chakra. Couldn't you seal it into someone else? Both brothers turned to their mother, who, for the first time since they started the conversation, was speaking. Why can't you just seal the beast into a random person if you can seal it into yourself? Because where would the chakra go? Since only Naruto and myself have the chakra pathways that can support the Shinju's chakra. If we did seal it into a normal citizen, there is no telling what the Shinju's chakra would do to the host body. Hagoromo paused again before adding to his words. There is also the fact that anything bigger could have disastrous consequences. It's bad enough that we're trying to seal away a possible primordial entity, but anything that destroys it could do serious damage to our world. There is an obvious reason that it is here, on this plane, otherwise it would have left long ago. It may hold the world together. That revelation was disturbing to say the least. The possibility that anything they did would end up with both Ōtsutsuki males dead was depressing. It was like either way they ended up dead. However, both boys would try go with the possibility of death rather than certain death. It was then that Kaguya decided to put an end to the depressing aura that had enveloped the room. Hagoromo, Naruto, go to bed both of you. Kaguya commanded to her children, though both of them knew it was actually her nice way of speaking to them. As they got older, both of them realized that their mother was starting to become harder on them. She still cared about the two of them, obviously, otherwise she would have left the two to their demise. Naruto theorized that the reason she was becoming harder on them was because they weren't cute anymore. He was promptly slapped up the back of his head for his comment by Hagoromo. Both boys nodded at their mother, with Hagoromo and Kaguya then left for their own rooms while closing the door. Naruto's eyes stopped their glowing as he then changed out of his robes into some loose pants from a storage scroll before sealing up the clothes he had worn during the day and placing it next to his bed. Naruto then laid down on the futon while hiding his newly made metal blades underneath his pillow, just in case. As he stared at the ceiling, Naruto pondered what was to come. What would happen after both he and his brother defeated the Shinju? If that happened, would people cast them out as freaks, worship them as gods, or try to manipulate them for their own ends? Naruto truly didn't know what would happen. How would he achieve peace? Both Hagoromo and his mother had their own methods to peace, but Naruto still didn't know how he was going to accomplish his dream. Though Naruto did know that there was going to be a lot of training in the future, whether to help take down the Shinju or even just to discover his own capabilities, Naruto would definitely be training in the future. His ability to combine elements was just too good to leave alone. There were just so many combinations, possibilities. It made Naruto's head spin thinking about all the possibilities that he hadn't uncovered yet. Wood, sand, explosion, darkness, light, crystals, maybe even non-physical elements like sound. And those were just off the top of his head. As Naruto thought about all that he would do in the future, he felt his eyelids become heavy, finding it hard to stay awake. Deciding to get some rest, he succumbed to his body's desire to sleep, closing his eyes and entering into a peaceful slumber. It would be several years before any of the Ōtsutsuki family would feel the stirring of the Shinju, though the constantly building chakra would give them enough motivation and incentive to train as much as they could. Hagoromo working on his Fuinjutsu, Rinnegan techniques, and preparing the seal for the Shinju, while Naruto would work on combing and creating new elements as well as his chakra constructs ability, feeling that it would be those two abilities he would need the most in his battle with the Shinju. The open spaces that were available to Hagoromo and Naruto greatly increased the power that they could put behind their attacks, helping them master devastating techniques, in Hagoromo's case, and creating large-scale attacks, in Naruto's case. They would feel the awakening of the beast. The completely overwhelming chakra would spread over the earth like a plague would be hard to ignore. Even the normal citizens of the elemental nations would feel it to an extent. They would feel constantly uneasy, like there was a spider on their neck that they couldn't remove. Surprisingly, the chakra of the beast wasn't filled with malice or pure evil, but neutral, neither good nor bad. Part of the family was actually grateful that the beast had finally come. The tension that was constantly building was almost unbearable. All three members found it hard to sleep with the atmosphere that was taking hold. Naruto actually thought that the Shinju would destroy his family without even doing anything. The increased tension from the looming threat of the Shinju, and combined with their different views on achieving peace, was putting a strain on the relationship of Hagoromo and Kaguya. What would usually be just staring contests and heated conversations had evolved into shouting matches that could only be resolved when Naruto physically got in between them. Fortunately and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the Shinju that destroyed the family, but the decisions that were made after it. It would be those decisions that would destroy the family and shape the elemental nations for years to come. As the battle approached, both brothers readied themselves, knowing that the beast would come for them as the only other chakra around besides its own. Both knew that the battle would be one of epic proportions. The amount of chakra and destruction that would be flung around would be, most likely, the largest amount ever at one time. This also affected where they would have their final battle. Hagoromo and Naruto knew that no civilians could get in the way. So they went to a place where there were no people, to the southeast of Fire Country. While there had been expeditions to the lower east of the Land of Fire, there were no sentient inhabitants. A quick flyover by Naruto proved this. The large circular land asterisk would be perfect for the confrontation with the Shinju, uninhabited, isolated, and spacious. When they felt the Shinju's awakening, both brothers quickly sighed goodbye to their, packing what they would need for the upcoming fight, and set off for their preset battleground. As both, now, men traveled to their destinations, uncertain of the outcome, both knew one thing. It would be a battle for the ages.